Chapter 1451. At this time, among the 4 people present, except for Noah, Alice, Yoli, and Huina's expressions all changed. Alice was shocked because of the unexpected news. Yoli and Huina were surprised. Unlike Alice, Yoli and Huina didn't know what kind of existence the so-called last king was. However, from the conversation between Noah and Alice just now, the 2 witches at least understood some things. For example, the so-called last king was a very dangerous and powerful god. Otherwise, even Guinevere and Lancelot wouldn't worship him, and Black Prince Yerek had been pursuing this mystery. Another example was that the so-called last king was a god that would appear in the end of the world. Although they didn't know what the end of the world was, if the arrival of a god was based on such a condition, then it would be terrible. After all, the appearance of a god that didn't obey was generally accompanied by disasters brought about by his own attributes. If the sun god appeared, the whole world may be attacked by high temperature. If the sea god appeared, the whole world may be submerged by tsunamis. If this so-called last king was the last king to appear in the world, then did that mean that when this god appeared, it would bring about disasters of the same nature? For example, the end of the world. If the god sleeping in this country was such an existence, then why did the elders in secluded world try their best to conceal the existence of such a dangerous god, and even summoned the great sage, heavens equal to heaven, to slay the dragon and the snake? The reason was completely clear. How could this be? Yoli said with some disbelief. Why would such a dangerous god be sleeping in this country? Grandpa and the others have been hiding the god. Is this last king? Even Huina said with some wry smile. It feels like things have become troublesome all of a sudden. As for Alice, she had recovered from her shock. She stood up abruptly and peered her pretty face in Noah's direction. She exclaimed with a face full of surprise. Is this news true? Noah couldn't help but laugh when he saw Alice's face, which was filled with surprise, suddenly appear in front of him. Although I only heard about it from others, based on what I've encountered so far, this news should be absolutely true. Hearing this, Alice's expression suddenly became absent-minded. I didn't expect that the last king was actually in this country. Then, Alice cheered up. Great, it was right to come here. Alexander definitely didn't know this news. In this way, I'm one step ahead. That guy will definitely be angry. As said before, in addition to being a god slayer, Black Prince Yerek was also an adventurer and explorer. Yerek's father had been pursuing the Holy Grail all his life. Even when he died of exhaustion, he still couldn't achieve his goal. Using this as an opportunity, Yerek embarked on the path of searching for the Holy Grail. Because of this, he coincidentally became a god slayer, completely opening the path of adventure and exploration. For this guy, the last king that Guinevere had been searching for was definitely a puzzle that could stimulate the greatest curiosity in his heart. Therefore, while looking for the Holy Grail, Yerek had been trying to solve the mystery of the last king. The former Guinevere tried to summon the last king by fabricating a myth, but the result was that he gave up halfway. The truth that led to the appearance of the legend of King Arthur was solved by Yerek. However, Yerek had never solved the real body and whereabouts of the last king. He could only find some clues. Alice couldn't help but feel excited when she thought about finding the whereabouts of the last king before her enemy. There's no time to lose. I have to quickly arrange for people to find the real sleeping place of the last king in this country. Otherwise, with Alexander's cunning, it won't be long before he finds out that the last king is in this island country. With such a sentence, Alice immediately got up, turned around, and prepared to run out without thinking. However, before that, Noah also got up and grabbed Alice's hand. Wait! Alice, who didn't expect that Noah would suddenly grab her, suddenly lost her balance and exclaimed. Following the strength of Noah's hand, she fell in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah almost subconsciously reached out and hugged Alice, who fell into his arms. Ah, wow! This time, even Yoli and Huina exclaimed and opened their eyes wide. Huh! Alice, on the other hand, couldn't react in time. When she felt the warmth of Noah's chest and the strength of his arm around her waist, her pretty face blushed slightly. Seeing the scene of Alice falling into his arms with a red face, Noah was amused. He reached out and pinched Alice's delicate little nose. "I say, no matter what, you are a senior who is a few years older than me. Can't you act a little more like an elder? Don't be so reckless. Otherwise, your title of princess will cry." Being treated by Noah with such an intimate action, Alice's face became even redder, and she retorted with an extremely unnatural look. "No. No such thing. This is a very calm judgment. Since we know that the last king is on this island, then of course we have to find him as soon as possible. If it was so easy to find, then you wouldn't have to search for the last king for so many years," Noah said snappily. "Besides, in this country, there is a group of old people who have lived in seclusion for who knows how many years. All these years, in order to hide the whereabouts of the last king, they have put in a lot of effort. In this way, how can it be so easy to find? The elders who live in seclusion?" Alice was slightly startled and frowned. "They hid the whereabouts of the last king?" "Most likely." Noah shrugged. "So, it's better that you don't rashly start a search in this country. Otherwise, if you are entangled by that group of arrogant old people, you will be annoyed to death. Even if you want to search, you can't let the Sage Council do the search. After all, this is the territory of the Official History Compilation Committee." "That's right." Huina nodded quickly. "It should be the committee that does the search. But, such a dangerous existence, why do we have to find it?" Yoli stepped forward and made his own voice. "Since the last king is so dangerous, let him continue to sleep and prevent others from waking him up. That's what we should do, right?" "How can that be?" Alice immediately retorted. "Then wouldn't it be not interesting at all?" This sentence made Yoli and Huina dumbfounded. "Interesting?" Noah couldn't help but cover his face. This Alice, she actually exposed her true nature. Ugh. Alice only then reacted and smiled a little embarrassedly. I mean, there is no way to deal with Lord Guinevere and Alexander in this way, right? Only by taking control of the information first can we make the next move. Is that so? Yoli and Huina looked at each other. However, the two witches still chose to believe in Europe's best woman and were deceived by Alice's obedient girl mask. At this time, Yoli's pretty face was slightly red, and she said with some anger, "By the way, how long are you two going to hug each other? Isn't it too indecent to do this kind of behavior on this occasion? You are the Devil King and the princess." Yoli's words made Noah and Alice react. The two were still hugging each other tightly. At the moment, Noah smiled awkwardly and let go of the hand around Alice's slender waist. Alice jumped away as if she had been bounced off. She also had an awkward expression on her face. At this time, Noah's mobile phone rang, interrupting the awkward atmosphere at the scene. Noah breathed a sigh of relief, took out his mobile phone from his arms, and picked up the phone. The next second, a valiant voice sounded from the mobile phone. "Our king, as your knights, we have come to your side. Are you not going to pick us up?" Noah's eyes lit up. Chapter 1452. This was a bustling airport with people coming and going. Although the location was some distance away from the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, this airport was the closest airport nearby. In this bustling airport, Noah, Yoli, and Huina stayed in a corner. The people around them were all locals who came to pick them up. As the people who got off the plane arrived one by one, the people who came to pick them up also enthusiastically laughed and chatted with each other. They walked to the exit of the airport hand in hand. It was very lively. Noah, Yoli, and Huina also came to pick them up. Because of the bustling airport with people coming and going, Yoli naturally did not wear the witch costume anymore. Instead, she changed into a white hooded coat and dark gray trousers. Huina was still wearing the student uniform from an unknown school. She even carried the long cloth bag with the katana on her shoulder. Both girls obediently stayed about a step behind Noah, occupying the left and right sides like followers. However, the people they were going to pick up now were Noah's followers in the truest sense. Miss Erica and Miss Liliana? Yoli murmured. It is said that the two are prodigies of Italy. They are genius knights who achieved the rank of a grand knight at a young age. At the same time, they are also followers that the king got after becoming a god slayer. Huina smiled with some expectation. I'm really curious about what kind of people the king's followers are. While saying such a sentence, a strong competitive spirit emerged in Huina's eyes. It was the manifestation of fighting spirit when it was aroused. It seemed that Huina was not curious about what kind of people Erica and Liliana were, but what level of power they had. It was an extremely pure martial arts style. Noah, who did not notice this, looked ahead and spread his hands. If I were to describe what kind of people they are, I can only say that they are two very eye-catching people in various senses. At this moment, the noise in the entire airport suddenly weakened. Noah, Yoli, and Huina, who were talking, raised their heads at the same time and looked forward in surprise. Soon after, the three of them understood why the sound around them had suddenly weakened. Because in the airport, almost everyone turned their eyes in one direction, as if attracted by something, and subconsciously shut their mouths. Noah, Yoli, and Huina immediately turned their gazes and looked in the direction where everyone was looking. Over there were two young girls taking strong and forceful steps. Under the gazes of everyone present, they slowly walked over. I say, Erica, it's about time you picked up your pace. Who knows when you'll reach your destination if you keep walking like that? You're still so inflexible, Lily. It's rare to come to a country that you've never been to before. Shouldn't you take a good look at the surroundings first? That kind of thing can be done in the future. There's no need to specially do it now, right? You're right, but we don't seem to have a reason to be in a hurry. Anyway, the king must be living a better life than us. It doesn't make a difference whether we arrive earlier or later. It's not a matter of ability, but a matter of loyalty and responsibility. Although I know you've always lacked such sentiments, that's the king we serve after all. It's a dereliction of duty if you don't rush to the person you need to be loyal to as soon as possible. You say so, but in fact, you're in such a hurry because you can't help but want to see the king as soon as possible, right? No, no such thing. Do you think you can make me waver by saying such words? I won't be affected by you. Lily, before you say that, shouldn't you think about your own performance? Is your voice trembling? The beautiful voice like that of a mighty lioness and the mournful voice kept ringing, frequently attracting the attention of the surrounding people. A young girl with waist-length golden hair that was resplendent like a crown and a young girl with long silver ponytail like a fairy in the night. One of them had a majestic smile. The other looked a little flustered. Both of them walked forward in the space under the gazes of thousands of people as if there was no one else around them. As the two young girls were conversing in Italian, the people here basically didn't know what kind of conversation they were having. But in any case, in terms of appearance alone, Erica and Liliana had strong capital to attract attention, making the bustling crowd in the airport quiet down a lot all of a sudden. A beautiful blonde girl and a beautiful silver-haired girl. For the people in this country, such two foreign beauties were definitely enough to shock them. Not to mention, the two girls were both people with great temperament. One was confident and gorgeous, while the other was awe-inspiring and rigorous. In various senses, they were existences that could attract the attention of others. Judging from this point of view, although Yuri and Keiko had looks that weren't inferior to the two young girls, they didn't have the kind of eye-catching high-profile temperament. Instead, they tended to be low-key like Yamato Nadeshiko. Therefore, for Yuri and Keiko, Erica and Liliana were the kind of people who were quite dazzling. It was precisely because she considered that they would be so eye-catching that Alice didn't come with them. Instead, she stayed in the hotel. If the princess, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, came to the airport in person, she would definitely become the most eye-catching existence in this airport, right? Even extremely dazzling people like Erica and Liliana couldn't compare. Of course, for others, Yuri and Keiko were the kind of people who were quite sophisticated. Under such circumstances, the two young girls, who were talking and walking as if there was no one else around, met Noah's eyes in the next moment. Both Erica and Liliana were slightly taken aback at this moment. Then, one of the two young girls showed an even more gorgeous smile, while the other regained her righteous expression. In the clear sound of footsteps, Erica and Liliana came in front of Noah. "Your Majesty," Liliana said in a serious tone. Liliana Kranikar has now returned. She was as serious as ever. "And me, Erica Browntree." The gorgeous smile on Erica's face didn't change in the slightest. "We haven't seen each other for a month, Your Majesty. Although I'm looking forward to hearing some touching words of reunion from you, I know that you're not the kind of person who is very emotional at all times, so I won't ask for anything." Erica was as confident and gorgeous as ever. The two knights, who had traveled with Noah for nearly half a year, finally returned to Noah's side again. Just as Erica said, Noah wasn't the kind of person who was very emotional at all times. Therefore, Noah could only smile bitterly and shrug at the two knights' announcement of their return in different styles. "Although that's the case, the timing of your return isn't too good. I reckon that you'll be involved in a big dispute all of a sudden." "If that's the case, it should be said that the timing is right," Erica said with a smile. "Appearing on the best stage is proof that even God doesn't intend to deprive me, Erica Browntree, of the opportunity to perform. No matter what the occasion is, my duty is to protect Your Majesty," Liliana said with a determined expression and tone. "As long as I can fulfill my duty, no matter what the occasion is, it'll be a good opportunity for me." A night full of confidence and a night full of honesty. Although the two knights spoke in different ways, the meaning behind their words was that they were willing to accompany Noah through mountains of swords and seas of fire. This made Noah feel helpless, but at the same time, the corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted slightly. At that moment, Huina, who was standing beside Noah, said with a sweet smile, "As expected of Your Majesty's official follower. Your words are so bold that even Huina is impressed." Hearing Huina's words, Erica and Liliana fixed their eyes on her. At that moment, no one expected that. This was the beginning of the dispute between the followers of Your Majesty. Chapter 1453. Noah didn't know if it was his illusion or not. However, Noah did feel it. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan looked at each other, and there were some sparks in their eyes at the same time. Huina stared at Erica and Liliana, and the smile on her pretty face was more or less different from usual. It was as if she was evaluating something, sizing up something, examining something, and confirming something. Looking at Erica and Liliana, Huina said with both shock and admiration. Huina can clearly feel it. Whether it is Miss Erica or Miss Liliana, although they are both very beautiful girls on the outside, they have a tempered aura. They are definitely not easy to deal with. Hearing Huina's words, Erica and Liliana looked at each other, and then looked at Huina again. "We have heard about you. I remember your name is Qingxiu Courtyard's Huina, right?" Erica accepted Huina's evaluation in an upright manner, and also glanced at Yuri, who had a blank look on his face as if he didn't know what was going on. "And you are Wanragu Yuri. Both of you are the witches of the Japanese magic world, and the followers of our king arranged by the History Compilation Committee, right?" "Yes. Yes." Yuri quickly saluted. "I am Wanragu Yuri, nice to meet you. I am Liliana Kranikar, belonging to the Bronze Black Cross of Milan, Italy." Liliana nodded politely. "During this period of time, thank you for taking care of our king. We sincerely apologize to you for the trouble he has caused." Hey. What do you mean by the trouble I have caused?" Noah felt that he should speak up. "I know my place, okay?" The word "know your place" is really not a compliment when used on a god slayer. Liliana immediately retorted. "Besides, I heard everything from Erica. It is said that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was released by our king. Isn't that true?" Noah was at a loss for words. "Because you released the great sage, Heaven's Equal, not only did god ancestor Ganivia come to this country, even the Black Prince and sect leader Luo Hao came. Liliana sighed. It was the same when you were in Italy. You made your debut by killing 2 of the highest level gods of disobedience. Then, you met Athena. Using this as an opportunity, you attracted Marquis Warban, Archbishop Luo Hao, and Salvatore. When you were in Naples, you got entangled with the Black Prince, Lancelot, and Perseus. It seems that in terms of the attractiveness of being a king, you have indeed surpassed the rest of your kind. Wasn't that right? At present, there were only 7 godslayers. There were only 7 godslayers among the billions of people on Earth. However, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, he would attract more than 2 or 3 of his kind. Gods were as numerous as the stars in the sky. However, there were not many gods of disobedience on the ground. Otherwise, veteran godslayers like Warban and Luo Hao would have killed an astonishing number of gods, and the number of authorities they would have obtained would have reached an unimaginable level. The reason why this did not happen was that most of the gods were easy to defeat but difficult to kill, and it was also because the gods of disobedience on the ground did not matter much. Under such circumstances, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, there would be at least 2 or 3 gods of disobedience. He was really an anomaly. In this regard, Noah had nothing to say. Fortunately, Liliana did not know that Luo Hao had been completely devoured by Noah. Otherwise, this innocent but delusional knight would have exploded long ago. Erica, on the other hand, looked natural and unrestrained. Lily, you can't blame our king too much. Just like how beautiful girls attract bees and butterflies, individuals with great power will only be attracted by great power. From this point of view, doesn't it prove that our king is more outstanding than the other godslayers? I'm not denying that our king is outstanding. Liliana shook her head. I'm just lamenting that our king's life has always been so turbulent. Indeed. Erica looked at Noah with a faint smile. It's naturally a good thing for a man to be capable, but for a woman who is attracted to such a man, it will be quite difficult. I hope our king won't make too many girls cry in the future. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched, and he felt like his sore spot had been poked. At this moment, Hui Na expressed a different opinion. Is that so? But Hui Na prefers men like our king who don't bring too much boredom. Erica and Liliana were both taken aback by his words. As for Yoli, he was frightened by Hui Na's bold confession, and he pulled Hui Na's clothes with a blush on his face. Hui Na, what are you talking about? Hui Na is just telling the truth. Yoli won't like that kind of boring man, right? Hui Na said to Yoli as if it was a matter of course. Then, she clapped her hands as if she had thought of a good idea. However, if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't like our king, it doesn't matter. Hui Na will be our king's attendant anyway. It doesn't matter if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are there or not. I'll repeat what I said here. Although Hui Na had received the education of a lady from a noble family, she was a natural girl who grew up in nature. Such a girl, even if she was the next head of the Meitio courtyard family, one of the 4 leading families in the Japanese magic circle, naturally didn't know anything about intrigue. Therefore, Hui Na's words were just pure thoughts in her heart. There was no malice in her words. However, in the ears of Erica and Liliana, this sentence was naturally full of provocation. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Yoli was a little surprised. Noah was also slightly taken aback. You're called Meitio Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Chapter 1454. Whoosh. A whistling gust of wind blew past, stirring up a cloud of sand and dust. In an open space in the suburbs not far from the airport, Erica and Hui Na were facing each other with a distance between them. Both young ladies had smiles on their faces. However, that smile showed that the 2 girls had completely different temperaments. The smile on Erica's pretty face was naturally an extremely gorgeous and confident smile. On the other hand, the smile on Hui Na's pretty face was so innocent. However, no one could clearly see the scorching battle intent contained in their smiles. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew past with a whistling sound, causing Erica and Hui Na's waist-length hair to sway up and down, making them look rather casual and unrestrained. Not far from the two of them, Noah, Yoli, and Liliana stood side by side as they stared at the two of them in a standoff. "Why didn't you stop them?" Yoli questioned Noah. "If it's your order, Miss Erica and Huina should have obeyed." "No, you're wrong, Wanli-gu," Liliana answered before Noah could. "Even if it's the king's order, those two probably won't obey. After all, although one of them is a knight and the other is a witch, they are still warriors at heart." Noah stared at Erica and Huina, who were in a standoff. "Even if I stop them, it will only slow down the burning of the tinder. It's better to get rid of them once and for all." But, Yoli said anxiously. "What if those two are injured?" "Don't worry," Noah answered directly. "Not to mention injuries, even if they lose their arms, legs, or even their lives, I have a way to make them recover instantly." "Is that so?" Liliana was a little surprised. "When did you master that kind of power?" Upon hearing that, Noah glanced at Liliana in exasperation. "When you didn't know." Naturally, this answer was not enough to make Liliana give up. However, before Liliana could launch her attack, Erica and Huina seemed to be tired of the confrontation and broke the silence. "The Steel Lion and the Lionheart King, as my ancestor, hear the oath of Knight Erica Brantley. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. My heart will not yield, my sword will never break. O Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King." Amidst the awe-inspiring voice, a light knight's sword that resembled a western sword flashed out of the radiance of spells and landed in Erica's hand. "Is that Miss Erica's weapon?" Huina's expression didn't change. She just untied the cloth bag on her shoulder, opened the bag, and slowly pulled out a sharp katana. "Then I'll use this to fight." Looking at the katana in Huina's hand, Erica said provocatively. "That doesn't seem to be a particularly powerful weapon." Erica's Lion King's heart wasn't an ordinary weapon. It was a magic sword forged with special alchemy steel and other magic mediums. This sword had an attribute called indestructible. No matter how it was destroyed, Erica could restore it in an instant. Whether it was sharpness or power, it wouldn't decrease in the slightest. Moreover, it could cut through iron like mud. On the other hand, although the katana in Huina's hand was quite famous, it wasn't a weapon that even people in the magic and spell world would be amazed by. It can't be helped. Huina's original katana was destroyed by the king because it offended him. Huina can only use this. Huina pointed the tip of the katana at Erica from afar, maintaining a smile on her face. "But this is enough. Anyway, my opponent is only Miss Erica." "Is that so?" Erica's eyes glinted. "Then I don't need to show any mercy." The moment she finished speaking, a surge of spell power surged from Erica's body. "Fly, Boots of Hermes," a magic square array shrouded in red light spun out from the ground under Erica's feet. As if it had become a propelling force, Erica's figure turned into an afterimage and shot towards Huina. It was a magic trick called Leap. It was a magic trick that could make one's body extremely light and even make one jump by stepping on air. After using this magic trick, Erica's body became extremely light and nimble. As soon as she stepped on the ground, she arrived in front of Huina in a flash like a slender bolt of lightning. Immediately after, the demonic sword in Erica's hand, which was called the Heart of the Lion King, drew a straight arc with a fierce force and pierced towards Huina's face. In the face of this fierce attack, Huina just narrowed her eyes and stared at the tip of the sword that was getting closer and closer. When the tip of Lion King's heart was less than 10 centimeters away from Huina, Huina suddenly raised the katana in her hand and performed a sword draw slash. Clang! The steel sword and the katana collided in mid-air, causing a crisp sound and a burst of sparks. However, at this moment, the corners of Erica's mouth curled up. She shook the Lion King's heart in her hand and suddenly thrust it out. Chi! The sharp magic sword cut through the air, bringing with it a cold light. However, there was not only one cold light, but three. They formed a triangle and pierced toward Hui Na at the same time with cold arcs of light. Wow! Miss Erica is so powerful. In the face of Erica's attack, Hui Na first cried out in surprise, and then she quickly took 2 steps back. She clenched the Tai Dao in her hand tightly, and without the slightest fanciness, she let her strength surge into the blade and slashed down at the 3 sword lights that were thrusting at her. Swish! It was a simple slash, but it brought with it a bright saber light. Like a waterfall falling from the sky, it tore through the air and heavily hacked at the 3 brilliant sword lights. Bang! Accompanied by a low explosion, the 3 cold lights were shattered by the saber light at the same time, shattering like glass in the air. However, this scene made Hui Na's face turn solemn. Since the 3 sword lights had exploded, there could only be one meaning. The real attack was not in the 3 sword lights. Whoosh! Indeed, a sharp demonic sword shot out like lightning from behind the 3 sword glows that had exploded like glass. It drew a straight trajectory and shot out like an arrow that had left a bow. Seeing this, even Hui Na did not dare to underestimate Erica's sword attack. She quickly raised the katana in her hand and collided with Erica's magic sword. Clang! After the crisp sound of metal clashing, the figures of the 2 girls holding the magic sword and the katana began to intertwine. Clang! 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 The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan seemed to have turned into 2 dancing phantoms at this moment. They intertwined in the open space like ghosts, and their sabers and swords mercilessly slashed at each other's bodies. Clang! 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 The sword light and the saber light repeatedly collided with each other, causing intense sparks to fly everywhere. Every time they collided, it would set off waves of sharp strength chi. It was like an invisible waterfall that landed on the surrounding open space one after another, leaving cuts on the surface. Noah, Yoli, and Liliana's eyes were all focused on the 2 figures that intertwined like ghosts and swung their swords at each other. Their eyes did not move from the beginning to the end, not even for a moment. In such a situation, Yoli was so worried that he even twisted his hands together. Liliana's face turned solemn, and she whispered. Hui Na of the Qingqiu Academy can actually use swordsmanship that is on par with Erica's. Her strength is really powerful. Erica probably can't do anything to her with swordsmanship alone. She can only use magic to determine the winner. Noah, who clearly heard Liliana's words, did not say anything on the surface, but he shook his head in his heart. Liliana's statement was correct. However, that was under normal circumstances. If Erica used magic, Hui Na would also use her trump card. It was a foul secret skill called God Descends. Chapter 1455. Clang. The sound of metal clashing and the bursting sparks were still reverberating in the space. Under the gaze of Noah, Yoli, and Liliana, Erica and Hui Na were carrying out an attack and defense that only masters of swordsmanship could do. The 2 sides exchanged blows, and the situation in the field was neck and neck. As Liliana said, Erica and Hui Na's attainments in swordsmanship were basically the same, so the 2 girls' attacks and defenses were quite perfect. However, that was only the current situation. Except for Liliana, Noah and Yoli both knew that Hui Na was still hiding her trump card. The secret technique named, Invite God to Descend, was a power that could even drive the personal disciple of the king of Wuxia, the best martial artist in the world, into desperation. Even Erica, who was known as a prodigy, probably couldn't deal with it, could she? After all, it was a skill that could borrow the power of the gods. Even if the borrowed power was only a few 10,000ths, it was still not something that humans could resist. Without the power comparable to that of a mythical beast or a god ancestor, it was impossible to resist. In Europe, knights with this level of power enjoyed the highest honor of paladin. This rank was only 1 level higher than Grand Knight, but the gap between the 2 was like heaven and earth. For example, it was not strange for a person with the title of paladin to kill a mythical beast or a god ancestor, but the existence of Grand Knight could barely cope with it. Previously, in Italy, Noah and his companions had encountered many mythical beasts. At that time, even if Erica and Liliana joined forces, it was still very difficult to deal with a mythical beast. Now, Erica was alone facing Witch Yuan, who could exert the power comparable to that of a mythical beast at any time. Of course, as long as one was aware of the situation, no one would be confused by the evenly matched competition in front of them. Therefore, the current situation was only temporary. Next, it was the real beginning. Just as Noah was thinking about this, the situation in the field changed immediately. Clang! With a loud collision sound of a saber and a sword, Erica and Hui Na were both shaken to a distance by each other's strength. They raised their weapons and pointed at each other, resuming the confrontation. Miss Erica is really powerful. Hui Na's expression was still calm, but the smile on her pretty face became much sharper than before. Hui Na's feeling is right. You're also powerful. You deserve to be the next head of the Qingxiu courtyard, Erica replied with ease. You do have the ability to be our king's follower. But if that's the case, the words that you said to replace me and Lily aren't convincing enough. You're right. Hui Na nodded generously. Well then, Hui Na, we need to get serious. With that said, an indescribable aura began to spread from Hui Na's body. I am willing to use this body as a sacrifice, please appease the spirit of frenzy. The solemn spirit of words reverberated in the air with Hui Na's lovely voice as a medium. Qin Pe, God Zi Yuan Mao, can surpass, today, my name, I regret not, at this moment, a power that made humans shudder slowly rose from Hui Na's delicate body like an invisible wave. Sensing that power, the confident smile on Erica's face finally faded bit by bit. Not to mention Erica, even Yuri and Liliana who were watching on the sidelines reacted to it. Is that the aura of God? Liliana was shocked. Could it be that Hui Na of the Qingxiu courtyard can borrow the power of God? That Witch Yuan actually has the aptitude for the God-vanquishing spell? By becoming a witch who served God, she could borrow the power of God and let a small part of God's power reside in her body. She would become God's emissary and wield the power of God. This kind of existence also existed in Europe. The magic world in Europe called this kind of existence a spiritualist, and the magic they used to borrow the power of God was called the God-vanquishing spell. In other words, it was the same kind of existence as Hui Na. However, in Europe, there had not been a spiritualist who could use the God-vanquishing spell for many years. There was actually such a rare talent in Japan's magic world. Feeling the power gradually rising from Hui Na's body, Erica's hand holding the sword tightened slightly. This is a bit troublesome. Even Erica, who had always been confident and flamboyant, could not help but admit that it was troublesome. One could imagine how surprised and dignified she was. It seems that if I don't take out my trump card, I can't win. Without any hesitation, Erica let the cursed power in her body burn like a flame and wildly surge out of her body. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, Lord, why have you forsaken me? Erica suddenly raised the Lion King's heart to the sky and chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. It was the spirit of words used to free Erica Branturi's strongest magic. Lord, I call during the day, but you don't answer. When I call during the night, you are silent. But you are the God who has become a saint and has been baptized by the many hymns of Israel. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit of words chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. But the spirit of words contained an extremely strong sense of despair, shaking the air. At this moment, the surrounding temperature began to plummet at an alarming speed. My bones are all decaying and collapsing, my heart has turned into wax, and my body has dissolved in it. Please abandon me in the dust of death, dogs surround me, and I will be abused by evildoers. Loneliness. Despair. Confusion. Curse. The spirit of words with all kinds of negative emotions that could make humans die filled every corner of the surrounding space along with Erica's voice, causing the temperature in this space to drop continuously until it reached a bone-chilling level. Become my power, grant me help as soon as possible. Save my soul from the sword, save me from the lion's teeth, save me from the horn of a buffalo. A pitch-black whirlwind gathered on the sword that Erica raised to the sky and gradually spun. However, it was not real wind, but a curse materialized in the form of wind. Let me tell you the name of the Lord. Praise him at the center of the world, convert and dedicate him. An explosive power surged from Erica's body. At this moment, the magic that Erica was using was called Calvary's Spirit of Words. It was a spell of despair and longing for redemption that ancient saints poured out to God before their deaths. It was a secret ritual that enjoyed the title of combat magic in Europe. When using this magic, just hearing the spirit of words chanted by the caster would blind the average person, and the physically weak would directly collapse. If the caster had the intention, she could even curse and kill everyone present who heard the spirit of words that contained the power of despair. Therefore, the moment Erica's spirit of words sounded, Liliana increased the spell power in her body to resist the despair and curse that came with it. Yoli's body stiffened, but Noah pulled her into his arms to prevent her from being affected by the spirit of words of despair. Huina widened her eyes slightly. Then, her eyes finally surged with excitement. That's amazing, Miss Erica. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card. Huina already feels threatened. That wasn't just a casual remark. The combat magic called Calvary's Spirit of Words had the power to inflict a certain degree of damage to gods and godslayers. It was the highest level of secret ritual that paladins below the rank of paladins could use. Okay. Huina's smile turned a little sinister. Huina won't hold back. As if intending to compete with the pitch-black whirlwind, a gray storm surged out of Huina's body. The storm of black and gray instantly swept across the field. On one side was a curse that could inflict a certain degree of damage to gods. On the other side was the power of wind that borrowed the power of gods to wield. The two storms wreaked havoc in the suburbs and expanded to the peak when Erica and Huina aimed their weapons at each other. If the two girls clashed directly like this, it would definitely cause a huge impact. Under such circumstances, even Liliana couldn't stand it anymore. She hurriedly spoke to Noah. Your Majesty. Please stop them. It's too dangerous if this continues. Indeed. Both Erica and Huina were no longer holding back. They had brought out their strongest trump cards. Next, no matter what the outcome was, Erica and Huina would definitely be severely injured to varying degrees. It was even possible that one of them would directly die. Although Noah had a way to resurrect Erica and Huina, that wasn't a reason for him to sit back and watch his companions die. Therefore, Noah, who felt that it was about time, nodded immediately. He reached out his hand and let the golden ripples spread out like water ripples around him. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. A black shadow suddenly shot out from the other end of the space. Chapter 1456. That black shadow was like an extremely fine silk thread, and even those with excellent eyesight would find it difficult to detect its existence. However, that silk-like black shadow cut through space, bringing with it a subtle sound of breaking through the air that was directly buried by the raging black whirlwind and gray storm, and shot from the other end of the sky. That speed was abnormally fast. Even if it could not be compared to the godly speed that could even control time, it could still be said to be comparable to lightning speed. Coupled with the fact that the black shadow was difficult to catch, and did not carry any hostility, killing intent, or malice, even Noah only noticed its existence when the black shadow was only a few meters away from him. Of course, with Noah's ability, it was more than enough for him to react at such a distance. Be careful. At that moment, Noah was slightly shocked, and he pulled Liliana into his arms, along with Yoli, who had just been protecting her, into his arms, and grabbed a girl's slender waist with one hand, and with the tip of his foot on the ground, he quickly retreated. However, the target of the black shadow was not Noah and his party at all. Under the astonished gaze of Noah, the black shadow, like a bird in a cage, rushed straight into the wave-like golden ripples that had just fluctuated. Yes. The opponent's target was not Noah and his party at all, but the treasure vault called the Gate of Babylon. No. That's not right either. To be more precise, it should be said that the opponent's target was an item in the Gate of Babylon. Therefore, under Noah's astonished gaze, the silk-like black shadow rushed into the wave-like golden ripples, and immediately shot out from it. However, The black shadow that shot out from the gate of Babylon was no longer in the form of a silk thread, but in the form of a bead. And in the bead-like black shadow, there was a fist-sized, obsidian-like badge. It was the Stone of Gorgon. The black shadow wrapped around the Stone of Gorgon rose into the sky like a dark meteor, and disappeared into the clouds in an instant. Looking at this scene, Noah seemed to understand something, and he raised his head and looked at the clouds. The sudden phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of Erica and Hui Na, who were about to charge into the fray. The two girls, who were about to strike with all their might, stared blankly at the black shadow that rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. After they reacted, they quickly put down the weapons in their hands and cancelled the spells of the Golgotha's word and God's descent. The dark whirlwind and grey storm raging in the suburbs gradually dissipated. Erica and Hui Na both looked at Noah speechlessly, and they seemed to be caught off guard by this sudden change. As for Yoli and Liliana, they had no idea what was going on at all. They stayed in Noah's arms with a blank look on their faces, not reacting for a long time. Noah was the only one who was looking at the clouds in the sky. At this moment, the whole sky suddenly surged with darkness for no reason. It was the night. The bright sky in the daytime suddenly seemed to be accelerated by the flow of time, and was covered by the emerging darkness. In an instant, the bright day turned into a dark night. Soon after, a light and low, sacred and dark ballad resounded under the night sky. I sing the hymn of the Trinity Goddess, connecting the sky, earth, and darkness, for reincarnation and wisdom. I sing the song of the goddess that has been degraded. As a queen, I am regarded as a forbidden snake. For the queen's sigh, I sing the hymn of the goddess that has been broken in body and mind, humiliated by a noble father. For the humiliation of a loving mother, my name is Athena, the daughter of Zeus, the patron of Athens, an eternal virgin. The past, for the Mother Earth that gives birth to all. The past, for the Lord of the underworld who controls the darkness. The past, for the Queen of Wisdom who knows the scattered wisdom of the heavens. I swear, Athena is about to return to the original Athena. As the sacred and dark ballad resounded throughout the night, a radiant figure descended from the sky like a goddess. She slowly bloomed with brilliant white light in the night and slowly descended. Looking at the figure, Noah murmured as if he had expected it. So that's how it is, you've finally come to my side? Taking a closer look, it was a young girl about 17 or 18 years old. The young girl was wearing a Greek-style long white dress. Her entire body was emitting a brilliant white light, but the surrounding space was surging with waves of darkness. It was like a black fog that swept through the air, blowing her waist-length silver hair. She looked exceptionally beautiful. Her delicate face and beautiful appearance, even Alice, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, could not beat her. Because, in mythology, this goddess was originally a virgin goddess famous for her beauty. The beautiful goddess floated under the night, looking down, but there was no one else in her eyes at all. Only Noah was looking at Noah. Looking at Noah standing on the ground, the beautiful goddess seemed to be looking at something special, like looking at a sweetheart, or simply looking at a fat prey, and she let out a charming laugh like a silver bell. I know, my fated one, you have a keen intuition and can find any enemy, but there is a limit to the distance. In order to retrieve that snake, I have been trying not to stimulate your senses, keeping a distance as far away as possible, and hiding my presence, secretly waiting for an opportunity. Now, I have finally waited for it. The god relic called Gorgon's stone had a deep connection with the goddess. No matter how far away, the goddess can clearly feel its location. Even if the stone of Gorgon is stored in another space, it will be the same. Although I don't know why, but in the past month, the snake aura that I placed on your body suddenly disappeared without a trace. But not long ago, the snake aura that I placed on your body reappeared. So, I came. It seems that even the goddess of snakes has no way to cross the world barrier and sense the existence of the stone of Gorgon that goes out of this world to another world. Then, after Noah returned to this world, the goddess who sensed the presence of the stone of Gorgon came directly. Moreover, she has been hiding in the dark, silently watching Noah. In order to wait for this moment. My fated enemy. The beautiful goddess floated high in the air, staring at Noah with burning emotions in her eyes. I have finally recovered the body of the Queen of the Trinity. It is time for you and me to fulfill our agreement and compete. The berserk curse power gushed out from the goddess' slender and beautiful body, spreading in all directions. Under the stimulation of the violent curse power, Yuri, who had spirit vision, spoke in a trembling voice. The disobedient Athena. With just this sentence, everyone present understood what kind of existence the goddess in front of them was. Especially Erica and Liliana, looking at the goddess who once appeared in front of them in the form of a young girl, and now had retrieved the snake part and turned into a young girl, they raised their swords and faced the sky. However, there was no one else in Athena's eyes at all. For the high and mighty goddess, mortals were not worth mentioning at all. Athena only had Noah in her eyes. Perhaps, with the relationship between Noah and Athena, even if there were other gods' layers nearby, Athena's first focus would be on Noah, right? The relationship between the two of them was bound together by this bond that was stronger than family, friends, and lovers even though they were clearly enemies. Here, Noah and Athena reunited. Chapter 1457. Under the dark night, the beautiful goddess stood in the air as if she was facing the wind. Her white and silver waist-length hair fluttered in the wind like the moonlight. The scene was exceptionally beautiful. Looking at Athena, who was floating in midair under the night sky, Noah didn't expect to reunite with her under such circumstances. After all, you are Athena. I thought you would definitely challenge me openly to take the power of the snake back from me. Noah looked straight at Athena. But, I didn't expect the result to be like this. If the situation allows, I wouldn't want to do this either. Athena seemed to agree with Noah's feelings and shook her head regretfully. If it's possible, I would also like to taste the fate between us bit by bit, and then slowly reap the results. But now, the situation doesn't allow me to continue like this. The situation doesn't allow? Noah was slightly taken aback and asked in confusion. What do you mean? Athena fell silent. After a while, she turned her head and looked into the distance as if she was looking at an existence that couldn't be captured by the naked eye. Ever since I sensed the aura of the snake and came to this land at the end of the east, I can often feel the restlessness in the air. That is a sign that this land is about to become chaotic. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and the goddess of war in charge of war. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena had the ability to predict the future and was wise enough to predict the future. And as the goddess of war, Athena could feel the arrival of war and disputes at any time. Now, the goddess who had recovered the identity of the ancient Trinity Queen of the divine realm asserted in an indiscernible but incomparably certain tone. The hero sleeping on this land is about to wake up and start the war against the demon king and the god slayer again. The part of me that is the goddess of wisdom told me so. Athena's words made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira look at each other. Noah was silent for a while and sighed. As expected, you know that the last king is sleeping on this land. I am indeed aware of this matter. Athena retracted her gaze from afar and turned her attention back to Noah. So, I came to find you, and did not hesitate to use this method to take back the power of the snake that belonged to me, and fulfill the fate between us. Is that so? Noah shrugged. Although I can more or less guess why you suddenly became so anxious, let me ask you the reason and confirm a little. Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking me when you already know the answer? How disrespectful to the goddess. If it was anyone else, I definitely wouldn't let them off so easily, but since it's you, I won't be angry, Athena replied while saying such ambiguous words with her beautiful face. This concubine has said before that as this concubine's fated enemy, this concubine will not let you die in the hands of that man. Letting you return to the earth is this concubine's responsibility. This sentence made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira's hearts sink slightly. The meaning of Athena's words was quite obvious. This goddess of wisdom believed that once the last king was awakened, then Noah would definitely not be able to defeat him, and there was even a possibility of him surviving. Therefore, after sensing that the last king might be awakened at any time in the near future, Athena was anxious to take back the god relic of the Gorgon stone in such a sudden way, restore her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, retrieve the highest level of God power, and challenge Noah. Granting life and death is the responsibility of this concubine as the god of the underworld. Returning to the underworld that I am in charge of is equivalent to returning to the embrace of this concubine who is also the goddess of the earth who gives life. Athena looked like a girl who was expressing her love to her sweetheart, looking at Noah with burning eyes. So, Noah Dole, this concubine will take you into the underworld that I am in charge of, grant you death, and make you my property. Be prepared. As soon as she finished speaking, a surge of curse power gushed out from Athena's body. Although the power of the curse was not as strong as that of the great sage, heaven's equal, who was supported by the universe and the stars, it was strong enough to compete with the highest level gods like Welslana, Mercado, and Perseus, whom Noah had fought before. This was the true strength of Athena who had retrieved the power of the Trinity. Rumble. Under such circumstances, the ground where Noah and the rest were standing began to tremble slightly. Both Erica and Liliana reacted almost immediately. "O Leonheart King, show me the essence of the struggle now, my wings, become the steel of the phantom blade. Master Silver Craftsman, grant me power," the two knights chanted at the same time, holding the heart of the Lion King and Master Silver Craftsman in their hands. One of them stepped forward and stood in front of Noah. As if intending to protect Noah, he pointed the sword in his hand at Athena who was in midair. Seeing this, Huina finally reacted. Her usually innocent face more or less showed a trace of annoyance. As soon as they sensed the possibility of a battle, Erica and Liliana immediately went into battle mode, standing in front of Noah fearlessly to protect Noah. That was the action that the true followers of a king should take. After traveling together for nearly half a year, Erica and Liliana had developed the awareness to become Noah's sword and shield at any time to protect Noah. Compared to Erica and Liliana, Huina, who was confident that she would not lose to the two knights from the beginning, was quite weak in this aspect, which fully reflected the gap between them. This gap was undoubtedly equivalent to telling Huina who was the most suitable person to be Noah's follower. It was because of this that Huina, who was previously very confident that she could replace Erica and Liliana, was a little annoyed. Perhaps he had sensed Huina's annoyance. Noah's gaze did not move away from Athena, and he spoke softly to Huina without turning his head. "Huina, I'll leave Wanli Valley to you." "Yes, King." Huina's expression finally relaxed. She turned sideways and came in front of Yoli, holding her tachi, and also became alert. "Mr. Noah." Yoli poked his head out from behind Huina and spoke nervously. Then I, Wanli Valley, I'll leave the task of contacting Mr. Ganzue to you. Tell him the situation here and let him be prepared to deal with the aftermath." Noah did not hesitate to assign the task to Yoli. "Also, if you see anything with your spirit vision, remember to tell us." "Yes." Yoli showed a determined expression and took out his mobile phone. At this moment, the trembling of the ground suddenly stopped. This was because the ground in front of Noah and his group had unknowingly bulged in several places and gradually squirmed and distorted. The next moment, the squirming and distorted ground transformed into 3 giant snakes that were comparable in size to high-rise buildings. They hissed in the direction of Noah and his group. The air vibrated instantly. Looking at the 3 giant snakes, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina's group of 4 girls all had solemn expressions. Divine beasts. There are 3, Athena, who had recovered her full strength, summoned 3 divine beasts in a short moment. If humans wanted to summon each divine beast, they would need to gather at least 30 magicians or conjurers of the highest level to hold a large-scale ceremony and spend a very long time to successfully summon them. However, Athena summoned 3 divine beasts with just a raise of her hand. This was the difference between the god of disobedience and ordinary humans. "Go, my followers." Athena, who was suspended in midair, ordered the 3-headed giant snake loudly. "Devour all the followers of my old enemy." The 3-headed giant snake's eyes suddenly revealed a fierce light. With a momentum that seemed to be able to shake the earth, it let out a long hiss and rushed out to attack Noah and his group. The battle was about to start. Chapter 1458. Rumble. Amidst the tremors of the earth, 3 huge snake monsters as tall as skyscrapers crushed the fragile ground. While plowing a trail on the ground, they charged in the direction of Noah's group. That scene was as if several tall mountains were closing in on them. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Looking at the 3 gigantic snakes charging toward them with great momentum, a cold glint flashed in Noah's eyes. Traces of cursed power surged from his body. But just as Noah was about to attack, Erica and Liliana stopped him at the same time. "Your Majesty, leave this to us for now," Liliana said in a stern voice. "Please save your strength to deal with Athena. It's just a divine beast. It's making a mountain out of a molehill to send a god-slaying demon king," Erica also said in a gorgeous and relaxed tone. "Right now, it's probably just Athena's probing. Or maybe Athena is trying to adapt to her newly recovered strength and is testing her skills. So, as our trump card, you can't expose yourself so easily." After saying that, Erica and Liliana looked at each other and nodded. Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and chanted Calvary's words again. "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani." "Lord, why have you forsaken me?" The despairing words reverberated in the air once again, causing the surrounding temperature to drop instantly. When Erica used Calvary again, Liliana also raised the Silver Grandmaster in her hand and made a declaration. "People, listen to David's lament. Why do heroes fall? Why do war machines vanish?" The words that were completely different from Erica's echoed, causing the surrounding air to slowly turn cold. This cold feeling was very similar to the Golgotha's word that Erica used. But the power contained in the 2 words was completely different. Erica's words contained the despair and hatred of someone who had been driven to a dead end. Liliana's words, on the other hand, were filled with sorrow that seeped into one's heart. It was as if the people of the world were lamenting and crying for a great figure who had passed away. It was very heart-wrenching. "Mountains of Gilboa, I pray that sweet dew rain will descend upon you. Offer the sacrifices that thirsty beasts yearn for. Abandon yourself and become the shield of the brave warriors of the other side, the shield of Saul. Inject fat into you and dedicate yourself to this place." Under the sorrowful spirit of words, a blue radiance flickered on Liliana's Silver Grandmaster. At this moment, the magic that Liliana used was the same as Electra's Calvary spirit. It was the highest level combat magic that could be learned under the rank of Holy Knight, the Song of Bow. If Erica's Calvary was to express the despair of a dying saint, then Liliana's Bow Song was to express the lament of a great hero who had passed away. Regardless of which side it was a combat magic spell that could bring a certain degree of damage to the divine capital and make the gods feel pain. Of course, although combat magic spells of this level could bring harm to the gods, the damage was very limited. Moreover, if it couldn't hit the target, it would be meaningless. For the gods, this kind of magic spell was only slightly pleasing to the eye. It could break through the curse resistance of the god slayers and the god of disobedience and thus take effect, but it didn't mean that it could bring about a threat. However, it was nothing to the god slayers and the god of disobedience, but it was a threat to the divine beasts to a certain extent. Therefore, Erica gathered the power of the Lion King's heart that carried despair and stabbed it out at the speed of lightning, slashing through one of the giant snakes. Slash! With a tearing sound, the giant snake's scales and skin were cut open, and a large amount of blood sputtered out. The giant snake let out a loud hiss, and the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It turned its head and charged in Erica's direction. At this time, Liliana suddenly jumped up like a swallow and cut through the sky. She waved the Silver Grandmaster Craftsman in her hand that contained the power of grief. Like an arrow, she flew past quickly. Slash! With another tearing sound, the other giant snake's eyeball was pierced through, and it let out a loud scream that shook the air. The second giant snake also turned its body and chased after Liliana, who was leaping back and forth in the air like a bird. Only the last giant snake was left, and it still charged in Noah's direction without hesitation. However, at this moment, a light voice sounded behind Noah. In the morning fog of the grassy plains, the bottom of the foot bag gradually became wet. After a long journey through the Su Changshao Plains, and then crossing the White River Pass, although it was only a small portion, the unique aura of a god rose from Noah's back. Under the heavens, Ji Ci, the food of the country, Ding Ci, etc. My wife is the ruler of the country, commanding the soldiers, calling for Ji Ci to come down, breaking thousands of plates. People will be in harmony, not serving as officials. The country will be in harmony with Ji Ci. The ethereal word spirit rippled in the dark night, causing a violent gust of wind to rise from the battlefield. It turned into countless sharp, invisible blades that rushed into the sky before descending, slamming heavily into the remaining giant snake. This time, a series of tearing sounds rang out one after another. The giant snake let out a painful hiss as its body was continuously sliced by the invisible wind blades. In an instant, its flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. Then, Hui Na, with her katana in hand, leaped forward and came in front of Noah. With her back to Noah, she shouted loudly, "Don't forget about me." After saying that, Hui Na rushed out with a whirlwind all over her body. Susanoo was the storm god. After borrowing the power of the storm god, Hui Na could also use a small portion of the storm god's authority to manipulate the wind. Its power was even stronger than that of the spirit of speech and the song of Bao. Just now, if Erica and Hui Na continued to fight, the final winner would definitely be Hui Na. Hence, while Erica and Liliana were struggling to deal with one of the divine beasts, Hui Na was already entangled with the remaining giant snakes. For a while, the three girls were evenly matched with the three divine beasts. However, Noah knew that the girls were in a bad situation. For example, Erica and Liliana's Calvary's word and Song of the Bow were gradually declining in power. After all, although the two combat magic skills were exquisite and could even break through the curse resistance of the God Slayer and the God of Disobedience, that was only the effect, not the power. As the highest level of combat magic under the rank of Paladin, although it could threaten the divine beasts, it was not enough to annihilate them. If they wanted to annihilate the divine beasts, Erica and Liliana were not strong enough. Unless the two of them could reach the rank of Paladin and learn the highest level of combat magic that only the highest rank of Paladin could learn. Otherwise, only by joining forces could they have a way to deal with a divine beast. In a one-on-one fight, Erica and Liliana's power was still a distance away from that of the divine beasts. Although Hui Na was evenly matched with the divine beasts by relying on the god's descent, she gradually lost her strength and began to slow down. Using the god's descent would put a burden on the body. If Hui Na couldn't deal with the divine beasts before her body couldn't move, she would definitely lose. Therefore, the situation was quite critical for the girls. This made Athena, who was floating in the air, let out a charming laugh. This concubine's fated enemy. It seems that your maidservants are no match for this concubine's family. In the competition between my subordinates, the one who wins will be this concubine. Hearing this, Noah did not have the time to speak when a dim light flashed in the eyes of Yuli by the side. This caused her face to be filled with joy as she cried out, "Everyone! Please attack the tail of the snake. That is the connection between the divine beast of the snake and the earth. The place where it obtains essence and life." Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na's eyes lit up. Chapter 1459. Bam! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the ground suddenly burst open, raising a thick cloud of dust and gravel. Amidst a series of loud noises, it smashed into the ground. It was the damage caused by the three giant snakes crashing into the ground with their huge bodies. With the three giant snakes as the center, the powerful shockwaves spread in all directions. In the shockwaves, Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na retreated in three different directions from the thick sand and strong shockwaves, and the curse power in their bodies surged to the peak. The first person to move was still Erica. "Steel Lion, I entrust you with the spirit of the words of Sai and Fury. Bathe in the holy blood of the last phase and manifest holy spear Longinus." While retreating, Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and poured all the curse power in her body into it. Suddenly, the Lion King's heart that had Golgotha's spirit emitted a dazzling red light. It continuously changed shape within the red light, and finally, it turned into an extremely luxurious-looking spear. "Hiya!" Erica yelled. She gripped the spear tightly, pulled it over her shoulder, and threw it out with all her might. The glowing red spear immediately turned into a flash of light. Like a red meteor, it cut through the space and directly shot in the direction of the giant snake. At the same time, Liliana raised the Grandmaster's silver sword in her hand in midair. Jonathan's bow, the hero's weapon that is as fast as a vulture and as strong as a lion. Run and destroy your enemy. The magic sword named Silver Grandmaster Craftsman blossomed with a blue light, and in the end, it transformed into a longbow that flickered with blue light. Wielding her longbow, Liliana pulled the bowstring in the direction of the giant serpent. An arrow flashing with blue light appeared on the longbow. The tip of the arrow was aimed at the giant serpent that was charging towards the ground. Shoot through. In the next moment, Liliana loosened her grip on the bowstring. As a result, the arrow that was flashing with blue light shot out and turned into another blue meteor. It also cut through the space and shot towards the direction of the giant snake with a sharp piercing sound. Although Hui Na was one step slower than the knights who had a tacit understanding, she didn't want to be outdone. She raised the Susanu's godly power in her body to the peak, causing a storm to surge out from her body like a tornado and cover her whole body. My back to you is the king of the country, true wood stands, unbreakable mountain oversteps, by and shoot to see my Harano, imperial residence, and Museet, in the words that sounded like a ballad. The storm that covered Hui Na's entire body surged towards the tachi in his hand, spinning wildly on the blade of the tachi. Take this. Immediately, Hui Na held the tachi that carried a raging storm. Her entire body suddenly swept out, turning into the third meteor, rushing in the direction of the giant snake. Whoosh! Amidst the almost identical sounds of breaking through the air, 3 meteors streaked across the sky, drawing a nearly perfect arc in space. They flickered with brilliant light and landed with extreme precision on the tails of the 3 giant snakes. Poochie! In the tearing sound, the spear flashing with red light, the arrow blooming with blue light, and the tachi that carried the storm pierced through the tails of the 3 giant snakes and even directly came out of their bodies. At this moment, the 3 giant snakes stopped abruptly. The red light in their eyes dimmed little by little. Even their bodies began to petrify and turned into snake-shaped statues. Bang! In the explosion, the 3 petrified giant snakes exploded and turned into gravel all over the sky. They scattered on the ground and disappeared without a trace. In the storm, Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na retreated as if riding the wind and waves. After a while, they landed on the ground. The whole place suddenly became quiet. Seeing that Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na had all defeated their divine beast-level opponents safely, Yuli breathed a sigh of relief. Although Yuli didn't directly participate in the battle, he had made a great contribution. Just now, if Yuli hadn't successfully triggered spirit vision and seen the weaknesses of the 3 divine beasts, it would have been absolutely impossible for Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na to defeat the 3 divine beasts unscathed. Knowing this, even Athena couldn't help but cast her eyes in Yuli's direction. She glanced at Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na, and finally fixed her eyes on Noah. You seem to have a group of capable warriors and witches under your command. Really? Noah smiled. It's really an honor to be praised by Athena, who has trained many excellent warriors. Athena was known for her wisdom and beauty, but when it came to training warriors, she had great authority. In Greek mythology, there were legends that Athena had trained many famous warriors. Among them, even the hero Perseus, who killed the snake-haired demoness Medusa, was ordered by Athena to go to the island of the snake demons to slay dragons and snakes. Therefore, Athena's words were undoubtedly more convincing than anyone else's. Just like a certain anime that had been popular for a long time, didn't it also mention a group of fighters who were constantly fighting under Athena's command like unkillable cockroaches? There was no way to use the same move twice against them, and there was still a certain power called the Little Universe that burst out from them. That was enough to prove how strong Athena's divinity as the god of war was. But it was also because of this that the performance of the group of girls was just barely acceptable to Athena. It's a great achievement for humans to challenge the followers of the gods as mortals and win, Athena said to Noah with a relaxed smile. It's just that those girls have reached their limits, right? Upon hearing that, Noah couldn't help but turn his gaze in the direction of Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na. He saw that Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na were panting heavily, their slender shoulders heaving up and down. In order to deal with the divine beast-level opponents, Erica and Liliana's spell power was almost exhausted. They couldn't even maintain the combat magic of the Golgotha's spirit and Song of the Bow, causing the red and blue lights flickering on the Lion King's heart and Silver Master Craftsman to gradually disappear. Hui Na, who had used God's Descent, was a little unsteady. She stood with difficulty and was in a rather bad state. In fact, Noah had already foreseen this outcome. Therefore, Noah didn't show any troubled expression. He raised his head, looked at the high and mighty Athena, and spoke indifferently. Even so, I'm still the winner of this competition between my subordinates. Upon hearing Noah's words, Athena's eyes flickered, and the smile on her beautiful and charming face became a little cold. It's just a playful competition. You're my fated enemy. Don't tell me you think you can win against Athena, who is in charge of war. No matter how small the war is victory, and defeat is defeat, Noah said with a half-smile. Or could it be that the famous Athena is not even willing to accept this level of victory? The smile on Athena's face slowly disappeared, and she stared at Noah speechlessly. Noah didn't evade and looked straight back. The expression in his deep, dark eyes remained unchanged. Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui Na held their breaths. An oppressive atmosphere began to spread in the air. After a long time, Athena suddenly sighed and smiled sweetly. It's also my mistake to reveal the competition between my subordinates without any consideration. All right, I'll let you win this time. But you have to remember, you're my fated enemy. The victory between you and me has only just begun. Athena's voice slowly sounded. I'll prepare a suitable battlefield to fight you. When the time comes, it will be a head-on battle between you and me. After saying that, a gust of darkness emerged around Athena, and she disappeared in an instant. Noah looked in the direction where Athena disappeared and didn't speak for a long time. Chapter 1460. Come on, drink this. In the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, Noah brought a bottle of red potion to Hui Na's mouth. Hui Na obediently drank the potion that was delivered to her mouth little by little. Looking at Hui Na, who was lying in her arms with a tired face, Yoli couldn't wait to ask Noah. Hui Na should be okay, right? It's okay, Noah responded casually as he fed the potion to Hui Na. Just like before, it's just a burden on the body caused by using invite God to descend. It's not a big deal. Drink this potion, and it won't take long for you to recover. Yoli's pretty face, which had been tense all the time, gradually relaxed. Beside her, Erica and Liliana, who were sitting and resting, were not injured, but they had consumed too much of their spell power. They explained the situation to Alice, who had been staying in the hotel. Even Athena has appeared? Alice sighed. Now, more and more god-slayers and disobedient gods have gathered. For the people of this country, this should be an unprecedented disaster, right? Liliana said with a sad face. I guess the force called the History Compilation Committee should be having a headache now, right? Perhaps, as Athena said, an unprecedented upheaval is about to happen in this country, Erica said calmly. Multiple god-slayers and disobedient gods have appeared in this country, and there are also unknown heroes sleeping in a corner of this island. Coupled with the god ancestor who has been eyeing this country covetously, the turmoil is inevitable. Upon hearing Erica's words, a sorrowful expression appeared on Yuli's face. Even the exhausted Hui Na let out a bitter laugh. She clearly felt that the future was going to be tough. Noah curled his lips and said so. Since the last king is sleeping in this island, then this turmoil will come sooner or later. Since it will come sooner or later, then it is already destined to be unavoidable. Why should we feel a headache now? Even Alice, Erica, and Liliana couldn't help but laugh bitterly when they heard this. However, Noah was right. Since the last king was sleeping in this island, it was only a matter of time before chaos broke out. Now, it was just a moment. What I am more concerned about now is the movements of the other godslayers. Noah turned his gaze to Alice. The chaos here should have spread throughout the entire magic world. The rest of the deicide should know about what happened here. Although I don't know if they already know about the existence and whereabouts of the last king, they shouldn't do anything unusual, right? For the demon kings who were born to be the source of chaos and the center of conflict, perhaps there was nothing more attractive to them than a hero who specialized in annihilating the demon kings. If the rest of the godslayers knew about the existence and whereabouts of the last king, it would not be strange for them to all gather in this island country. When that time came, it would truly be the end of the world. All 7 of the god slayers were gathered in one place. That was a terrifying result that no one wanted to imagine. After all, no one would put 7 nuclear bombs that could explode at any time together, right? Who knew if one of them would suddenly go crazy and explode, igniting all the other nuclear bombs and causing a big explosion together? That scene could only be said to be too beautiful and no one dared to look at it. In this regard, Alice seemed to have a deep understanding of this and smiled elegantly. I have already contacted the Sage Parliament and asked them to report to me the current movements of the god slayers all over the world. According to the report from the Sage Parliament, at present, the movements of the 7 god slayers in the world were as follows. Marquis Warban was staying in his villa in Austria and did not do anything unusual. Bishop Luo Hao was discovered this morning to have returned to Mount Lu in China and did not come out. Madame Aisha's current whereabouts were unknown and there was no news at all. However, this situation had been maintained for many years, so there should be no abnormalities. John Plato Smith was still in Los Angeles, North America. He was leading the good faction's magicians to deal with the evil faction's magicians. If there were no accidents, he would not have the time to wander around other countries. The idiot Tony was taking Andre to East Asia. There seemed to be signs of the god of disobedience there, which made Tony very interested. So far, there were no signs of changes in the itinerary. As for Alexander, just as you think, that guy is currently hiding in this country. Alice reported the current movements of the god slayers to Noah one by one. Then, the rest is you. That should go without saying, right? As she said this, Alice looked at Noah with a somewhat strange expression. Even her pretty face was a little flushed. Seeing Alice in such a state, Liliana asked curiously. Princess, what's wrong? No, it's nothing. Alice coughed deliberately and glanced at Noah. I think it's better for you to not know for the time being, although you will find out sooner or later. While this sentence made Liliana puzzled, it also made Erica raise her eyebrows and cast an inquisitive look at Noah. Obviously, even though she didn't know what had happened, Erica still guessed that Noah must have done something. In this regard, Noah just glanced at Alice a little unnaturally. As a result, Alice's pretty face became even redder. The way she looked at Noah was as if she was looking at a wolf in sheep's clothing. It was very strange. Seeing Alice's reaction, and thinking that she now knew the movements of the various god slayers, Noah knew what was going on. Alice must have already heard the rumor that Noah had taken Luo Hao as his concubine. After all, His Excellency had already said that he would announce this matter to the world. If Alice was investigating the movements of the god slayers, it was only a matter of course to know this news. This made Noah look away from Alice's strange and curious gaze with some resentment. He also deliberately coughed and turned to look at Yoli. Then, what did the History Compilation Committee say? Hearing Noah's words, Yoli was a little worried. Actually, the committee has brought some bad news. Including Noah, the attention of everyone present suddenly focused on Yoli. Isn't it good news? Noah spread his hands. Athena has already said that the last king is on the verge of recovery. There is no news worse than that. Wanraku, just say it directly. I understand. Yoli took a deep breath and became serious. According to the report of the committee, not long ago, a huge amount of cursed power gathered on the beach near Tokyo, accompanied by the natural phenomenon of lightning and thunder. Not long after that, a huge amount of cursed power also gathered on the beach not far from here, but it was accompanied by the sudden darkening of the sky. Lightning and night? Erica murmured. That's a phenomenon that can't be any more obvious. Athena should be on the other side of the night, right? Liliana said directly. That goddess is probably preparing for the battle with the king, just like when she made the declaration. Lancelot should be on the other side of the lightning. Alice nodded. As the war god of steel, Lancelot's characteristics are the power to control lightning and the ability to turn his body into mist to achieve immortality. Now, the signs of lightning have appeared, which should be Lancelot's appearance. In other words, the war god is no longer the shadow of God, but has appeared as the god of disobedience? Huina asked in surprise. Why did he suddenly appear? I'm afraid that the god has already noticed that the last king is on this island and is ready to go all out. Noah frowned. However, Athena and Lancelot appearing at the same time is a little troublesome. Now, it's up to you. Erica looked at Noah. Which side do you want to go to? Noah was silent. This was truly a difficult choice to make. Chapter 1461. Crash. The sound of the waves reverberated in the silent night, filling the air with a tranquil atmosphere, calming the hearts of the people. The goddess, who was famous for her beauty, was currently standing on the beach where waves were constantly crashing. She was looking at the endless ocean, her robes fluttering in the wind, adding a sense of beauty to the tranquil atmosphere. If this was just an ordinary night, such a scene would definitely make anyone who saw it fall into a trance. Unfortunately, this was not an ordinary night. If someone was here, they would definitely notice it. Now, it was not even noon yet, let alone night. However, even though it was not even noon yet, the sky here was as dark as night. There was not even a full moon or stars. All the light had disappeared without a trace in this area, leaving not a single trace. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was an environment where one could not even see one's fingers. Anyone who could move normally in such an environment would definitely not be an ordinary person. Under such circumstances, the goddess named Athena looked at the scenery of the ocean and murmured. Sure enough, the battlefield should be on the sea. In fact, the sea god Poseidon was Athena's archenemy. At least, in Greek legends, the relationship between Athena and Poseidon could only be described as enemies. In Greek mythology, Poseidon, the sea god who ruled the sea, was quite aggressive and ambitious. He always wanted to seize the throne of Zeus, the king of the gods. However, he was discovered by Zeus and was banished to the ground. However, Poseidon's divinity had an aggressive side, which made him unable to rest in peace and often fought with the gods. For this reason, Athena and Poseidon also fought in the myths and formed a grudge. However, Athena, who regarded Poseidon as an enemy, did not hate the sea ruled by the sea god because of this. This was because the sea and the earth were the source of life. As the goddess of life and death, Athena could not hate the sea. What Athena really hated was the sun. The sun could illuminate the sky that was controlled by Zeus, who had always been bullying Métis, who was equivalent to Athena's avatar. Zeus had also reduced Athena to his own daughter and expelled the darkness, driving out the night of Athena, the goddess of darkness, causing the sky to fall into the hands of Zeus. If there was no sun, the sky would be Athena's domain. Athena's darkness would occupy the entire sky, and every corner of the sky would be under her control. However, it was because of the sun that Athena's darkness was unable to take over the sky, preventing the night from descending. As a result, the sky had always been Zeus' domain. That was why the queen of the night, Athena, was truly unhappy with the existence of the sun that could expel the darkness. Of course, Athena's pride would not allow her to admit that the reason why the goddess hated the sun was because the sun was the nemesis of the goddess of earth. As the god of death who controls hell, as the goddess of darkness who brings the night, as well as the goddess of earth who is the source of life, no matter which attribute it is, the sun firmly restrains Athena. After all, since ancient times, not only was light able to expel darkness, but it was also believed to be able to expel ghosts and undead, preventing contact with hell. On the other hand, the earth could only thrive and obtain life under the sun's illumination. As the queen of hell, darkness, and earth, Athena's attributes were completely restrained by the sun. This was also one of the reasons why Athena hated the sun. Every time Athena appeared, it would be accompanied by the arrival of night. This was an important reason. Even if Athena regained her identity as the queen of the Trinity, she would not want to move around under the sun, so, I have to choose the sea. With this thought in mind, Athena's eyes that gazed at the sea emitted an evil glint. Her eyes were like an owl's, but also like a snake's. The common point was that they were extremely cold. Being stared at by these eyes would definitely bring death to humans in an instant. Under the gaze of such a pair of sinister eyes, the surging waves in front of Athena came to a halt as though time had come to a halt. Rumble, the sea suddenly trembled for no reason, and as if there was a volcanic eruption at the bottom of the sea, it suddenly surged violently. Crash. Accompanied by a loud sound of water, an island separated from the surface of the water and slowly rose up. It was a stone island. Whether it was the ground, the trees, or the grass, they were all made of stone. Such a stone island separated from the surface of the water and rose from the bottom of the sea. Not long after, it floated above the surface of the sea and stopped trembling as if it had been there from the beginning. When the stone island completely floated above the surface of the water, Athena's evil eyes dimmed little by little, but an extremely beautiful smile appeared on her face. Yes, this is it. Only this is suitable to be the battlefield of the goddess of earth. Although Athena's attributes were more complicated in mythology, after regaining her identity as the queen of the Trinity, Athena's essence was only left with one. Snake. The snake goddess who had been banished by the heroes of the Steel Empire and attacked by them. Since this is the battlefield of fate, only this can best represent Athena's snake. Looking at the stone island that she created with her authority and divine power, Athena let out an innocent and joyful laugh like an ordinary girl. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there were many statues on the stone island. Each of them was made of stone, and their faces were filled with panic, despair, wailing, and fear. They were lifelike human statues that made people feel a chill in their hearts. Gazing at these creepy statues, the smile on Athena's beautiful face became wider and wider. Although this is just a scene created by my authority, and not those stupid warriors that once challenged my clone, it is enough to serve as a foil. Yes. Whether it was the island that originally only existed in mythology, or the statues that once challenged the Medusa, but were turned into stone, they were just foils. Athena only cared about the man that had a deep relationship with her. It was precisely because of this that Athena enjoyed all of this from the bottom of her heart. She enjoyed the whole process of preparing to meet that man again and determine the winner on the battlefield. For Athena, this was something to be intoxicated with. My fated enemy, hurry up and come to me, Athena murmured expectantly. I can't wait any longer. While murmuring the words of a young girl who missed her sweetheart, the smile on Athena's face suddenly disappeared without any reason. Soon after, Athena suddenly opened her mouth in anger. Leave here, maid, this is a place that I prepared for that person, it is not a place that you can set foot in. Along with Athena's angry shout, the sand on the beach suddenly rolled up and turned into a giant snake. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards the grass in the distance. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, the giant snake that used its huge head to hit the ground shook the violent impact and dust, causing the ground to tremble and crack. Then, in the impact and dust, a figure of light rushed out and burst into the distance, disappearing without a trace in an instant. Seeing this, Athena snorted, turned her head, and continued to look at the creepy rocky island. As if thinking of that man again, she revealed a charming smile. At the same time, the figure of light that escaped from Athena's attack swept into the distant horizon. After a long time, it stopped and revealed its full appearance. Impressively, it was Guinevere. Guinevere's face was a little pale, cold sweat dripping down, and he muttered to himself with some lingering fear. I didn't expect Athena to be so obsessed with the relationship with that king. She didn't even give me a chance to speak before attacking. Originally, Guinevere wanted to try to cooperate with Athena to deal with Noah. But now it seemed that Athena would not agree to let anyone interfere with her relationship with Noah. There's no other way, I can only give up on Athena's side. Guinevere was extremely unwilling to turn into a stream of light and rushed in another direction. Chapter 1462. An island has appeared by the sea. In the hotel, Noah, who was still worrying about where to go, immediately received the shocking news. An island? Hui Na asked curiously. Why would an island suddenly appear? I don't know. Mr. Gansu just called and told me about it. He asked me to report it to the king. Yoli shook his head. If we can get closer, we might be able to get more information. But Athena seems to be there, and the people of the History Compilation Committee don't dare to get too close. In other words, it should be Athena's doing, right? Liliana said with a stern expression. To be able to create an island out of thin air, no other power in the world can do such a miracle except for the power of the god of disobedience and the god of deicide. But why would Athena create an island? Hui Na didn't understand. What's the point of doing that? I'm afraid that's the battlefield that Athena mentioned, right? Erica said. In order to face the opponent that she acknowledged, in order to fight against the man of her destiny, Athena prepared the stage. It was a battlefield that she created with the consciousness to perform the final glory of her life, whether it was for the king or for Athena. But since Athena didn't hesitate to create an island, it shouldn't be an ordinary island, right? Alice pondered for a moment and asked Noah tentatively. Do you need me to use my spirit body avatar to take a look? No, it's better not to do that. Noah rejected Alice's proposal. To Athena, humans are like weeds. They are of no importance. If you barge into Athena's territory, you might be attacked. She is the god of the underworld who controls death. Even if you use your spirit body avatar, she might have a way to hurt you. That would be too dangerous, Yoli hurriedly advised. Miss Alice, it's better not to do that. You're right, Alice said helplessly. Although I'm a little curious and concerned about the island, it's better not to approach it casually since it's dangerous. At least, it's best not to approach it without the company of a god slayer who can fight the goddess. But at least we understand one thing, Erica declared. That is, Athena is indeed very interested in having a showdown with our king. Everyone nodded in agreement. The gods of disobedience were originally a group of transcendental existences that had been devoured by madness. They were only normal when they were in the realm of the undead, which was the world of myths and legends. If they appeared on the ground, they would immediately fall into a certain obsession, and for that, they would not hesitate to disturb the world and slaughter living beings. For Athena, Noah was her obsession to appear in the world. If she didn't end things with Noah, the goddess would probably chase after Noah until the end of the world, even if the world fell apart and the universe was destroyed. In fact, at the end of the day, Noah and Athena didn't have much contact with each other. It was only because of a chance encounter that they became friends. If Noah hadn't met Athena, he wouldn't have found the stone of Gorgon by tracking Athena's whereabouts. If Noah hadn't found the stone of Gorgon, he wouldn't have been targeted by Athena. If Noah hadn't been targeted by Athena back then, she wouldn't have schemed to lure Warban, Luohao, and Tony to him. If Noah hadn't defeated the three god slayers because Warban, Luohao, and Tony were lured by Athena, Athena wouldn't have looked at Noah in a new light and started to pay attention to Noah. After that, Noah and Athena formed an alliance together in Naples to fight Perseus. After a series of disputes, they formed a deeper relationship and made an agreement. Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but think of the agreement he made with Athena in Naples. At that time, Noah and Athena made an agreement that there would be a real winner one day. At that time, if Noah won, then Athena would be able to stay by Noah's side forever as a guardian and fight with Noah. And if Noah lost, then Noah would be at Athena's disposal. In fact, the reason why he made such an agreement was entirely because of a whim. As for Athena, Noah felt that it was inconceivable. Noah had always been the kind of person who would be good to others if others were good to him. If others were to find fault with him, then he would return the favor tenfold or even 100-fold. Undoubtedly, the goddess had caused a lot of trouble for Noah in order to retrieve the stone of Gorgon, but Noah didn't dislike Athena at all. Instead, as he got along with Athena, he was gradually attracted by the goddess' pride and charm. That feeling was not love, but it was a kind of specious thing. Presumably, Athena must have felt the same way, which was why she was so obsessed with Noah. If this kind of feeling had to be described with something, then it could only be described by Athena. Fate. This was the fate between Noah and Athena. To put it bluntly, it was just a kind of ill-fated relationship. However, whether it was Noah or Athena, because of this ill-fated relationship, they began to pursue each other. Athena said. No matter what, she was the only one who could bring death to Noah. Noah had said the same thing. In any case, the person who could defeat Athena must be him. From then on, the fate between Noah and Athena had reached a deep-rooted state and could not be forcibly broken. Therefore, when she sensed that the last king was likely to wake up at any time to conquer the demon king and the god slayer, Athena was eager to recapture the stone of Gorgon, restore the power of the Trinity, and end things with Noah. However, when he saw Athena again, Noah was not as eager to fight as Athena. Otherwise, Noah wouldn't have chosen to watch from the sidelines during the confrontation with Athena and sent Erica and the other girls to accept Athena's challenge. Then, he used the victory of a subordinate's competition as an excuse to make the prideful Athena leave as a loser. Because, Noah believed that if she lost a duel, with Athena's self-esteem, she would never be like a stray dog, unwilling to accept defeat and continue to challenge. The reason why he did this was because Noah subconsciously did not want to fight to the death with Athena. That was the reason. And it turned out that Noah's idea was correct. Athena did not continue to fight on the spot, but chose to retreat. However, Athena immediately began to prepare for the battlefield again, and even summoned an entire island. One could imagine how much Athena looked forward to the battle with Noah. Under such circumstances, could Noah still avoid the battle? If he avoided the battle, how disappointed would the goddess, who was known for her beauty, be? At that moment, Noah closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui Na, as well as Alice, all the girls present cast their eyes on Noah, waiting for Noah's decision. In the end, would Noah choose to fight Athena? Or fight Lancelot? The decision was made at this moment. After a while, Noah suddenly opened his eyes and made such a declaration. After sunset, we will fight Athena. Hearing this, Erica and Liliana smiled at the same time, knelt on one knee, and performed the most solemn knight salute. Yes, sir. Yoli and Hui Na looked at each other, nodded, and turned to Noah. King. Please let us join the battle. Noah nodded, then turned to Alice. Meeting Noah's gaze, Alice opened her mouth, and just as she was about to say something, the phone in her arms rang. Alice was slightly taken aback. She smiled apologetically at Noah, picked up the phone, and looked at the screen. At the next moment, Alice's eyes widened, and she exclaimed in shock. Alexander was severely injured by Lancelot and escaped. This sentence made Noah's eyes flicker. Chapter 1463. Above the boundless sky, a bolt of lightning abruptly flew across the clear sky. It cut through the air and cut open the atmosphere. With a sharp sound, it rushed forward. With a speed comparable to that of lightning, Yurek used the authority of lightning spark to enter the world of seraphic speed. His body had also turned into lightning. He desperately whipped his body, squeezing out the remaining curse power and physical strength in his body. He gritted his teeth and didn't waste a single second of time flying. For the current Yurek, time was definitely the most precious thing. Because with Yurek's speed, he only needed a short second to cross a city and reach the other side of the sky. In other words, time meant distance. With just one more second, Yerek could increase the distance and avoid being chased by the enemy. Although Yerek had used the authority of seraphic speed, and it was reasonable to say that there were no more than 3 people in this world who could catch up to him. However, the enemy didn't belong to this category. He was an incarnation of the realm of the gods and couldn't be judged by common sense. Therefore, Yerek could only whip his body desperately to escape. He didn't know how long this situation lasted. Yerek only knew that when the curse power in his body that was thousands of times more powerful than the average magician's was finally exhausted, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. The speed of the lightning that was flashing in the sky slowed down bit by bit. Like a kite with a broken string, it fell down to the ground. Finally, as if a bolt of lightning had fallen from the sky, the lightning suddenly landed on the bank of a river. Bang! The lightning from the sky exploded the ground, causing bricks and gravel to fly up and sand to fill the air. After the sand and dust dissipated, Yerek was lying in the hole that had been blown up by the lightning, gasping for breath. Cough! With a cough, Yerek spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only that, but blood continuously flowed out from Yerek's abdomen and instantly dyed the ground red. Taking a closer look, there was a bloody hole in Yerek's abdomen. It even broke open Yerek's back. In other words, there was a hole in Yerek's abdomen that allowed one to see the scene behind him. The sharp pain seemed to come from his bone marrow, tormenting Yerek's remaining consciousness. The damage to his body was very serious. The pain in his abdomen was very intense. His heart was beating like a drum. It felt like every corner of his body was breaking apart. It was unbearable. There was no doubt that Yerek had received a fatal injury that could take his life in an instant. An ordinary person, even a magician with high attainments in magic, would most likely die from such a serious injury. To be able to survive such a severe injury, it was definitely not a human. Only a godly ancestor like Guinevere and the princess could survive such a serious injury. Only a godly ancestor like Guinevere and the princess could survive such a serious injury. However, Yerek was a demon king that surpassed even the aforementioned existences. Although his body was that of a human, his vitality could be considered monstrous. That was what a true god slayer was. This was also the reason why Noah, who had a large chunk of his abdomen dug out by the 3-headed dragon, was able to continue living like that. The so-called god slayers were such a group of unnatural existences. That was why they could even kill gods. That was why they were feared by humans. Perhaps, only the legendary hero who specialized in annihilating the demon kings, the last king, would be able to deal with these foul existences. However, if this continues, no matter how tenacious my vitality is, I will still die from excessive blood loss. Now, Yerek was facing such a situation. Naturally, he himself understood this the best. If he had the power of resurrection like Noah and Warban, Yerek might still be able to survive. If he had the power of immortality like Tony, who could enter a state of suspended animation, Yerek would be able to survive until someone came to his rescue. Unfortunately, Yerek did not have that kind of power. If there was still curse power in his body, he could still use the power of lightning spark to turn into lightning and abandon his human body to avoid death from excessive blood loss. This was one of the reasons why Yerek was able to survive until now. However, now, the curse power in Yerek's body had been completely exhausted from the previous battle and escape. In short, Yerek could only resign himself to fate. Although he said that, Yerek endured the severe pain in his body and laughed self-deprecatingly. Although it's up to fate, in the end, I will still be saved, right? After all, Yerek was very clear. The woman who had always been against him would definitely have placed some spies around him. Therefore, that woman would definitely be the first to know about his condition and rush over. At that time, Yerek would naturally be saved. Although, if that woman saved me, I would rather die. As soon as he said this, an elegant and light voice sounded in front of Yerek. That's great, Alexander. You've finally understood how I felt in the past. Hearing this voice, Yerek breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he clicked his tongue in his heart and raised his head with difficulty to look forward. In front of Yerek, the space suddenly trembled. A gush of darkness surged out of nowhere and condensed into the shape of a door. Then, from the door that seemed to be formed by a pitch-black swamp, two figures slowly walked out and came to Yerek, who was lying in a pool of blood. "Hello, Alexander." Alice seemed to be friendly as she greeted him. "I didn't expect that I would be able to see you in such a miserable state in my life. As expected, your good behavior is blessed by the heavens. I know that once you appear in front of me, you won't say anything nice, but I still feel very unhappy." Yerek tried his best to keep his voice from trembling and tried to be as calm and normal as usual. He then turned his gaze to the other person. "It's just that I'm really surprised that you're here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not interested in admiring other people's miserable state, whether it's my own people or my enemies," Noah said faintly. "I just want to know how difficult it is to deal with Lancelot in the state of the god of disobedience." "Is that why you're here?" Yerek laughed self-deprecatingly. "Well, at least that's a convincing reason, unlike the woman beside you, whose mind is twisted." "I don't want you to say that, Your Highness the Black Prince with a twisted mind," Alice said nonchalantly as if she was really admiring Yerek's miserable state. "Anyway, the reason why you're so badly injured must be that you found out that Lancelot was accumulating power and was preparing to descend as the god of disobedience. In order to prevent the enemy from becoming too powerful, you thought that you had to take action at that time and take advantage of the opportunity to kill Lancelot. In the end, you were defeated by Lancelot, right?" Yerek was suddenly speechless. "It seems that I was right," Alice said cheerfully. "But it's also true. Black Prince Yerek is a self-proclaimed god-slayer as a wise man and counselor. In order to show his rationality and to prove that he's different from others of his kind who only know how to fight, he must think that it's a stupid thing to let the enemy increase his power. But that's because of your twisted mind. TSK." Yerek smacked his lips. "What makes you say that? Is it wrong to think this way?" "Of course it's right to think this way. The problem is what you did next," Alice said directly. "Anyway, although you calculated the pros and cons clearly, because of your pride, you would never do something like a sneak attack. You must have provoked Lord Guinevere and Lancelot in front of them and started a fight, right?" Yerek's mouth twitched. Obviously, Alice had hit the nail on the head again. Chapter 1464. In fact, what happened was not much different from what Alice had said. Lancelot appeared as the god of disobedience, and Yerek was almost immediately aware of it. As soon as he noticed Lancelot's abnormality, Yerek immediately rushed in his direction without any hesitation, not caring about Athena's abnormality. That was to be expected. Compared to Athena, Lancelot was undoubtedly the target that Yerek wanted to get rid of. Because of Guinevere, Yerek and Lancelot had fought many times over the years, and had already formed a lot of grudges. Naturally, with Yerek's personality, it was impossible for him to watch Lancelot's strength increase. Originally, Lancelot was only a shadow of God protecting Guinevere. If Lancelot got rid of his identity as a guardian and no longer appeared as a shadow of God, but as the god of disobedience, his strength would definitely increase by several times, and there would no longer be a problem with the duration of his appearance. In that case, Lancelot would undoubtedly become a very troublesome opponent for Yerek. There was no other reason other than the fact that the two were not compatible. As the most original god of war of steel, Lancelot's martial arts were not inferior to Luo Hao's. It was precisely because of this that Lancelot naturally mastered the mind's eye skill that could break through lightning speed. Once, in Nabali, Lancelot used the mind's eye skill to break through Yerek's lightning speed, and almost gave Yerek a fatal blow. At that time, Lancelot was still in the form of a shadow of God, and could only appear for a short period of time. Moreover, his strength was not as high as those of the highest level gods, and had a lot of limitations. If Lancelot appeared as the god of disobedience, it was only natural that his strength would increase sharply, and even the duration of his appearance would be cancelled. For Yerek, who used lightning speed as his main fighting method, it was really too disadvantageous. For this reason, Yerek naturally had to prevent Lancelot from appearing before he obtained all the strength of the god of disobedience state. Unfortunately, Lancelot's appearance had been going on for some time, and his strength had accumulated a lot. Thus, Yerek, who had brazenly entered Lancelot's territory, was met with a deadly counterattack from the pure-blooded steel hero. He was heavily injured and could only rely on his speed to escape. It was just as Alice had said. Undoubtedly, Yerek had calculated the pros and cons, but because of his own aesthetics, he disdained to use a sneak attack. In the end, under the situation where his seraphic speed authority was restrained, he was naturally counterattacked by Lancelot, whose strength had suddenly increased, and almost died. It was impossible for Yerek not to see through this in advance. It was impossible for Yerek, who had already fought Lancelot many times, not to understand that his greatest battle technique had been countered by his opponent. However, Yerek didn't choose to launch a sneak attack. Instead, he chose to challenge them head-on. Perhaps you miscalculated Lancelot's strength, but more importantly, you knew what the outcome would be, yet you still chose to fight based on your own aesthetics. That's why you ended up like this, isn't it? It was as if Alice had witnessed the entire battle with her own eyes. She spoke with fervor and assurance. Undoubtedly, you are smart, but you insist on some stupid principles in some unnecessary places. That is proof of your twisted mind, Alexander. You really are a god-slayer. Don't talk to me as if you know me very well. I'm not that close to you. Yerek couldn't help but feel a little agitated because his sore spot had been poked. In the end, he forgot that he still had a fatal injury, which caused his chest to tighten, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Alice laughed. You can still speak so agitatedly even after suffering such a serious injury. It seems that you are fine. Indeed, you are worthy of being called the Demon King. Yerek could only close his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. It seemed that being reduced to such a miserable state in front of his enemy really made Yerek feel extremely aggrieved. On the other hand, Alice was very happy. I finally returned the favor here, Alexander. After this time, I don't owe you anything. Although Alice and Yerek were enemies, they didn't have a grudge against each other. Instead, it was because of their positions that were hostile to other parties that led to this situation. In other words, they were the so-called political enemies. And since it was due to political hostility, it would never be mixed with personal feelings. For example, in the situation of dealing with Guinevere, Alice and Yerek had the same position and interests, so the two had cooperated many times. Because of this, Alice had been saved by Yerek once in the past. At that time, Alice's feelings were probably similar to Yerek's now. Seeing Alice continue to mock Yerek with a happy face, Noah couldn't help but shake his head. He stepped forward, took out a bottle of potion from his arms, opened the bottle, and poured it directly into Yerek's penetrated abdomen. Clang! The potion that was poured into Yerek's penetrated back immediately evaporated into a mist. It covered Yerek's body like a soft fluorescent light, emitting light. Under the illumination of the light, the wounds on Yerek's body that directly penetrated the front and back of his body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Yerek only felt that the severe pain in his abdomen began to disappear little by little, and the lack of physical strength in his body began to recover little by little, which surprised him a little. Chapter 1465. After that, Noah shared some information with Yerek and learned about Lancelot's current situation. At present, Lancelot had appeared in the state of the god of disobedience, but his power had not increased to the extent that he should have. After years of guarding Guinevere, Lancelot had already adapted to the state of the shadow of God. Now that he had suddenly turned into the body of disobedience, his power could not be increased to the peak at once. It needed to be accumulated bit by bit. According to Yerek, Lancelot had now accumulated a considerable amount of power. Yerek had miscalculated Lancelot's current power, which was why he was seriously injured. If this continued, it would not take long for Lancelot's power to recover to the peak of the state of the god of disobedience, and he would become a powerful enemy no weaker than the great sage. For this reason, Yerek said that he had to keep an eye on Lancelot and see if he could find an opportunity to attack him. Noah naturally had no objections, but he gave Yerek a request. "No matter what, I will fight with Athena tonight," Noah said to Yerek. "At that time, whether you can find an opportunity to attack Lancelot or not, if Lancelot intends to intervene in the battle between me and Athena, you must stop him." "Tonight?" Yerek looked at Noah meaningfully and curled his lips into a smile. "You really are a god slayer." This remark came out of nowhere. However, anyone who understood the reason behind it would understand why Yerek said this. Noah naturally understood why Yerek said this, and he retorted, not to be outdone. "Do you have the right to say this to me?" Yerek wanted to refute Noah's words, but when he glanced at Alice's eager expression, he immediately shut his mouth. Presumably, if Yerek refuted, Alice would use Yerek's serious injury as an excuse to fight back on behalf of Noah. Understanding this point, although Yerek was very unhappy, he didn't want to ask for a snub, so he immediately said to Noah, "I can keep an eye on Lancelot, but I can't guarantee that the short-sighted god ancestor won't have other ideas." Since Guinevere didn't hesitate to let Lancelot show up, it means that the last king Guinevere has been looking for is very likely to be nearby. That guy will definitely do something. You decide what to do. True enough. Just as Alice had said, Yerek finally noticed the last king. Moreover, Yerek had given such an explanation. The hero who is destined to annihilate the demon king. Now that there are already 7 god slayers in the world, is it a certainty that he will awaken again? Or is it something that can be stopped? The only people who will bear witness to this outcome will probably be you and me. If it can be stopped, then I don't mind giving him a hand. But if it is inevitable, then presumably, at the same time, the person who will bear witness to this outcome and become the first sacrifice under the hero's sword is also likely to appear between you and me. After leaving these words, Yerek released the power of speed, turned into a flash of lightning, and disappeared on the other side of the sky. After that, Alice said that when she returned to the hotel, she would use her avatar to keep an eye on Yerek. According to what the princess said, she seemed to think that Yerek would do something. Indeed, under the circumstances of having a common enemy and common interests, the Black Prince Yerek is a trustworthy partner. But that psychologically twisted guy also has a side that will not hesitate to give up if he thinks that the plan will fail. He is simply too evil. If we don't keep an eye on him, who knows if he will suddenly retreat at the critical moment and leave the mess for us to clean up. In view of this, Alice loudly advocated that they must keep an eye on the Black Prince Yerek. Indeed, there was a possibility that Yerek would suddenly put his own safety first and escape like a cicada. Otherwise, after being severely injured by Lancelot, the Black Prince would not have escaped so quickly. Once he saw that the situation was unfavorable, this guy would definitely suddenly withdraw. To put it nicely, it would be a wise choice. To put it bluntly, it would be adding insult to injury. In short, Alice believed that they still needed to keep an eye on Yerek. Although, Noah thought that rather than saying that Alice intended to spy on Yerek, it was better to say that she intended to keep mentioning in Yerek's ear that he saved her, so as to give this guy a blow and amuse him. But it had to be said that Alice's suggestion was also correct. Therefore, Noah did not object. Neither Noah nor Alice noticed. Unknowingly, the two acted together as if it was a matter of course, without any consideration at all. Just like this, Noah and Alice passed through the portal and returned to the hotel. And as soon as they returned to the hotel, Noah discovered it. Erica and Liliana, who were chatting with Yoli and Hui Na, immediately looked at Noah with a strange expression when they saw him return. Seeing this, for some reason, Noah suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. Then, Erica and Liliana both spoke. "Although I know that you are more unreasonable than the other godslayers, I didn't expect you to be this unreasonable." Erica used sarcastic words to mock Noah. "However, as your follower, let me congratulate you a little. Our king, you have accomplished another feat that the other godslayers could not. I thought you must be much more rational than the other godslayers, but sure enough, you are also an unreasonable king." Liliana, on the other hand, stared at Noah with eyes that seemed to be filled with anger and sadness, but more than that, it was as if she had been betrayed. I was wrong about you, Noah Doria. Seeing that both Erica and Liliana were angry, the corner of Noah's eyes twitched. He could not help but look at Yoli and Hui Na. Sensing Noah's gaze, Hui Na did not know why, but she turned her head away with some embarrassment. As for Yoli, her pretty face turned red as she stammered. Actually, Mr. Gandu just called me and said that someone left a message for the king and sent it to my phone. After saying that, Yoli operated the phone and played the language. The next moment, a rather familiar voice sounded from Yoli's phone. Grandmaster, disciple Lu Yinghua has already announced the news of Grandmaster taking my master as a concubine to the world under master's orders. I believe that Grandmaster's name will spread all over the world in a few days to strengthen Grandmaster's reputation. Noah's face froze. Also, disciple heard that there seems to be another troublesome opponent on Grandmaster's side, so I reported this to Master. Lu Yinghua's voice was still playing. Master asked disciple to tell Grandmaster that Luo Tsuelian is now a married woman. Although she can't show her face in public, she still has the responsibility of assisting her husband and teaching her children. She should be by her husband's side when he is in trouble. However, Luo Tsuelian's husband is an unparalleled king. He can overcome these small tribulations with his unparalleled strength. There is no need for a woman to tell him what to do. Therefore, Master will continue to live deep in Mount Lu and wait for Grandmaster's triumphant return. After saying that, Lu Yinghua's voice disappeared from Yoli's phone. The whole place fell into a dead silence. Alice couldn't help but mutter. Although I knew that this news couldn't be hidden sooner or later, I didn't expect it to be so soon. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched uncontrollably. He had no idea what to say. Looking at Noah, Liliana still looked as if she had been betrayed. Erica glanced at Noah and said with a faint smile. Even sect leader Luo Hao can be taken as a concubine. As expected of our king. Therefore, as your knight, I hope you can explain the process to us clearly. You must let us understand how powerful our king is. At this moment, Noah only felt that. Perhaps, this would be an even more difficult calamity to overcome than the duel with Athena. Who knows? Chapter 1466. No matter how many twists and turns there were, time would not stop just because of that. Under all kinds of circumstances, the sky gradually darkened. Noah walked out of the hotel alone and stood in front of the door. He looked up at the starry sky and fell into silence. Lancelot was probably still accumulating power, right? Yerek, on the other hand, was definitely not going to act rashly. He was hiding in the dark and keeping an eye on the original hero of Steel. Alice was lying in a room in the hotel at this moment. She had used a spirit clone and sent it to keep an eye on Yerek. Of the remaining people, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui were preparing to set off. They were adjusting themselves so that their bodies could exert 100% of their strength. In other words, Noah was the only one who had nothing to do at the moment. However, Noah was not to be blamed for that. For a godslayer, there was no need for him to adjust his state of mind. No matter how bad their condition was or how rusty their body was, once they wanted to fight from the bottom of their heart, their body would be stimulated with hormones stronger than adrenaline, allowing their body and mind to enter the best condition for battle in an instant. Therefore, for a godslayer, adjusting one's condition was completely unnecessary. That was because a godslayer was an existence that was born for battle. If an athlete did not persist in training, their physical strength would gradually decline, and their limbs would gradually become sluggish. Even if they persisted in training, once they reached a certain age, their physical condition would continue to deteriorate until they were only slightly stronger than the average person. However, a godslayer did not have this problem at all. It didn't matter how many years it had been since he had trained, or even if he hadn't done any sports, or even if he had completely forgotten how to fight. As long as they focused, raised their fighting spirit, and entered a state of battle, the godslayer's body and mind would immediately be adjusted to the perfect condition. They would never become weaker than before. The so-called godslayers were a group of beings that broke the rules. They would only become stronger and stronger. There was no reason for them to become weaker. Moreover, as long as they could fight, they would naturally become stronger even if they did not train, exercise, or learn. Therefore, the gods' layers were monsters that were born for battle. Therefore, even the gods had no choice but to be wary of these demon kings. They chose a brave one to be in charge of annihilating these foul existences. As one of the gods' layers, Noah's true power had long since surpassed that of the average god-slayer, reaching an unprecedented level of power. Coupled with the god-slayer's monstrous characteristics, it was no wonder that Noah was breaking more and more rules. Of course, these transgressions were merely the characteristics of the god-slayer and could not be considered his strength. The true power of the god-slayer lay in one thing: power. It was the power of the gods that had been forcibly seized from the gods in the heavens. Only when they had the right to use it could a god-slayer be a match for the gods, surpassing the humans and reaching the realm of true god-slayer. Therefore, authority was undoubtedly the true trump card of the god-slayers. The rest of the god-slayers were the same. Noah was the same. Noah reached out a hand and pressed it against his chest. He closed his eyes and immersed himself in the depths of his heart. There was a universe filled with nebulas. In the center of the universe, there was a stone plate with 10 connected patterns. On the surface, there was a sun with the imprint of a lion and a dragon. This stone plate was now in a deep slumber, giving off a lifeless feeling. Because the time to use it had yet to come. However, he only needed to wait until dawn, and the stone plate would regain its vitality. At that time, Noah would be able to use his trump card power. Yes. As long as he waited until dawn, Noah's adaptation period would be over. At that time, Noah would be able to use the power of the oldest demon king with 3 digits, known as Az-Dakaha of the final trial of mankind, and even surpass him in power. With that level of power, he would not even need a minute to deal with Athena. After all, Athena's power, in the box, was at most 4 digits. It was a piece of cake for a 3-digit number of people to deal with a 4-digit number of people. However, Noah did not have such thoughts. It was not that Noah did not respect Athena and felt that he did not need to use his full power against her. It was also not that Noah underestimated himself and felt that Athena's power was not enough for him to use his full power. Instead, Noah's intuition told him that after dawn, the battle with Athena might not be able to be carried out. Noah didn't know why, but he had such a feeling. So, tonight is the night. Noah opened his eyes and looked at the night sky again. Tonight is the only chance for me to end things with Athena. Because of this, even if he could use his power at dawn, Noah still could not choose to wait. Tonight was the night to put an end to it. Just as Noah silently made up his mind, a few figures slowly walked out of the hotel door. Sensing the aura behind him, Noah turned around and looked in the direction of the hotel door. There, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina stood side by side, all looking at Noah. At this moment, there was no fear in the eyes of the 4 young girls. Even if they knew that they were about to face a god that humans could not reach, the 4 girls did not show the slightest fear. No. Perhaps, in the hearts of the girls, there was still a fear that Noah could not detect. But even so, the girls still chose to overcome their fear and move forward bravely. Erica and Liliana were determined to fight to the end as Noah's knights. Yoli and Huina were determined to protect this land as Witch Yuan. For this, the 4 girls would follow Noah and challenge the gods. Knowing the determination of the 4 girls, Noah wouldn't say anything that didn't look at the atmosphere. Under such circumstances, Noah only smiled, turned around, and looked forward. Let's go. Hearing this, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina all nodded slowly, their eyes surging with high fighting spirit. Crash. Amidst the clear sound of the waves crashed against the edge of the small island made of rocks before slowly retreating. It was an extremely dark place. In the night sky, there was no full moon, no stars, and no trace of light. In this night sky that completely eliminated all light sources, leaving only darkness, the rocky island was like the back of a giant man-eating beast, making people tremble with fear. At a certain moment, a dim light suddenly flashed from the edge of the sky, sweeping over like a meteor. The meteor-like dim light streaked across the sky and finally fell on the chilling rocky island, setting off a whirlwind. Then, the dim light gradually dimmed, exposing the scene inside to the air. It was Noah and his group. Liliana used the witch's flight spell to bring everyone to the rocky island. As soon as they entered the rocky island, except for Noah, the vision of the four girls was completely blocked. It was not a mysterious effect, but simply because it was too dark, their vision could not capture anything at all. Noah had once absorbed the protozoan virus that could provide night vision, so he could see everything clearly at night. However, the girls were only ordinary humans and did not have night vision. However, the girls chose to use magic and incantations to make up for the lack of night vision. Light, please reside in our eyes, yin and yang, heaven and earth, light and darkness, advance and retreat. Erica and Liliana chanted night vision magic, while Yoli and Huina also used incantations to increase their vision. In this way, the surrounding environment was suddenly revealed to all the girls. However, it was precisely because of this that the next moment, the hearts of the girls suddenly jumped violently. Chapter 1467. In the dark moonlit night, on the small island that was filled with a terrifying atmosphere, creepy statues filled the surroundings of Noah's group. They were all petrified humanoid statues. Some of the people in the statues were wearing tattered cloth clothes, some were wearing armor, some were fully armed, and some were lightly armed. But without exception, all of them were carrying weapons, and the muscles on their bodies were bulging. Their physiques were strong, and they seemed to have an unusual sense of oppression. However, the four girls, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Huina, couldn't help but gasp when they saw the expressions on the statues. They were all muscular and armed, and it was clear that they weren't ordinary people at first glance. What kind of expression was that? Fear. Wailing. Horror. Despair. The expressions and performances of the human-shaped statues perfectly displayed these emotions. They were extremely vivid, as if they were real people. And if they were real people, then what did these people experience before they were petrified to show such expressions and performances? No one, including Noah, could imagine. There was only one thing that was certain. That was, if these stone statues were real people, then they must have seen hell before they were petrified. The stone statues on the Serpent Island. Erica couldn't help but murmur. It's just like the Invisible Island. The Invisible Island. In Greek mythology, the island where the Medusa, the Gorgon, resided. In Greek mythology, Medusa, who was originally a goddess but was cursed by Athena and degenerated into a monster, lived on the island called the Invisible Island. Together with her two sisters, they were known as the Gorgon sisters. When they were still in the world of the form moon, Medusa, who was Noah's servant, said that no matter what era it was, there was never a lack of heroes who wanted to defeat monsters and become famous. Therefore, humans who were confident in their own abilities and wanted to become heroes continuously went to the Invisible Island to challenge the banshee living on the island. However, in the end, the dreams of these humans were cruelly shattered one after another. Their foolish challenge ended with them being turned into stone one by the snake-haired demoness known as Medusa. Now, Athena was on this island. On this island, there were countless stone statues of people who were clearly warriors. This scene was like a reenactment of the scene on the Invisible Island. I see. Liliana said with mixed feelings. Did that goddess choose to face her destined enemy in such a manner? No matter what era it was, there was never a lack of humans who wanted to defeat monsters and make a name for themselves. However, they ended up becoming sacrificial lambs because they overestimated themselves. But at the same time, no matter which era it was, the final outcome of the monsters was to be suppressed by the true heroes and become the souls of the dead under the heroes' swords. Athena was also a Medusa. That was why Athena chose to recreate the Invisible Island that once welcomed the human warriors as Medusa. The meaning behind it was to express his determination. Should they preserve their past glory and turn the challengers into stone statues and take them to their deaths? Or should they lose in the end and be suppressed by the true heroes and become the stepping stone of the true hero's fame? Athena was looking forward to one of the two outcomes. This reminded Noah of Azrael Dakaha, the evil god of the fire worship sect, who was known as the final trial of humans, had once roared at Noah in such a manner. I am the absolute evil. What lies above my corpse is justice that was right. Since Azrael Dakaha was the absolute evil, then wouldn't the human hero who defeated the demonic dragon represent the absolute righteousness? The core of the fire worship sect was the dualism of good and evil. However, the existence of evil was only to highlight the importance of good. After all, only when evil existed in this world, humans who fought against it would become the true absolute righteousness. Without the existence of evil, the existence of good would also become dispensable. Just like how humans would only seek the light in the dark. Only when evil existed, humans would sincerely seek the absolute righteousness. The three-headed demonic dragon of the fire worship sect defined its existence as the absolute evil. It would not compromise with humans and spread despair and hell in the name of the final trial of mankind so that true absolute righteousness would never disappear from the world. That was the meaning of the existence of evil in the fire worship sect. Heroes would only be born in troubled times. Only in the darkness would light come. Righteousness would only appear in evil. Only in despair would there be hope. It was just like how Noah was disappointed by the hatred of the humans in the world of the Black Bullet, and chose to give up on saving the humans. In the end, he saw the only hope of the humans in despair. Now, Athena recreated the island of the snake demon and the legacy of the myth to express her resolve. She would not compromise with the humans. Only by defeating her could one become a true hero. However, this resolve was not directed at the entire human race. This time, Athena recreated the legend of the invisible island for one person. That person was Noah. It was not a challenge to the entire human race but a duel with one person. Here, the goddess named Athena displayed an awareness and spirit that was definitely not inferior to the final trial of mankind. Understanding this, Noah's entire body began to heat up, and an explosive force surged out of his back. At this time, Noah finally ignited his true fighting spirit. In order to live up to Athena's expectations. At this time, the silence was broken. Crack, without any reason, a cracking sound was suddenly heard. Noah and the others' expressions froze as they turned their heads and looked at the source of the sound. There was a stone statue there. However, a crack suddenly appeared on the stone statue. This immediately caused a chain reaction. Crack, 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 crack. Around the group of people, the stone statues suddenly cracked without any warning and were full of cracks. At the same time, a powerful spell power fluctuated from the stone statues and spread to the surroundings. Erica, Liliana, and Huina took out their weapons without hesitation. With a leap, they surrounded Noah and Yoli in a triangular formation and were on guard. Almost at the same time, the cracking sound came to an abrupt end. Boom! A stone statue suddenly exploded, sending stone fragments all over the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Accompanied by the sound of explosions, the stone statues exploded one after another, raising a burst of dust. Soon after, numerous figures slowly appeared from the dust that filled the entire space. Ah! Yoli couldn't help but let out a small cry of surprise. Not only Yoli, but even Erica, Liliana, and Huina couldn't help but tighten their grip on their weapons. Noah furrowed his brows and scanned the surroundings sharply. From the dust, people appeared one after another. They were all stone statues before, but now they had turned into normal human warriors. However, none of these warriors had pupils. Their eyes were all sinister white, and their skin was shriveled. Their bodies swayed as they stood, like dried corpses. Noah had seen the same scene before. In the battle with Warban used the power of the Servant of Death to summon the dead to fight for him. They were in such a state. Be careful! Erica couldn't help but shout. Athena is also the god of the underworld. She can bestow death to humans and manipulate the dead. These people are most likely the human warriors who were summoned by Athena and petrified by the snake-haired demoness Medusa. They failed to challenge the snake-haired demoness. As soon as he finished speaking, the dead surrounding the group of people suddenly raised their heads, and their shaky bodies suddenly stabilized. The next moment, the dead rushed over one by one. Noah clenched his fists tightly as he watched the undead charging at him one after another with weapons in their hands like frenzied beasts. Chapter 1468. Heart of the Lion King, show the essence of the struggle in my hands, my wings, become the steel of the phantom blade. Silver Master Craftsman, bestow upon me strength, Gwawan, Taboo Duck, Long Words Mother, Silk Flute Cowards. When the hordes of the dead charged toward Noah's group, Erica, Liliana, and Huina chanted incantations at once, instilling the spell power in their bodies into the weapons in their hands. The group of undead charging at the front immediately howled and pounced at Erica, Liliana, and Huina. They mercilessly swung their rusty weapons at the three girls. Undoubtedly, the weapons were covered in rust and looked like they couldn't even cut through a piece of cloth. However, they easily tore through the air, stirring up sonic booms, and slashed down heavily at the three slender girls as though they wanted to cut them in half. Clang! Along with the neat sound of metal clashing, the weapons in the hands of the dead at the front were all blocked by the weapons in Erica, Liliana, and Huina's hands, stirring up a burst of sparks. Ugh! At that moment, the three girls let out soft groans one after another. Although they successfully blocked the attacks of the dead, the weapons in front of Erica, Liliana, and Huina each rubbed fiercely against at least 3 or 4 rusty weapons, enduring the simultaneous attacks of 3 or 4 dead. As a result, Erica, Liliana, and Huina each had to deal with at least 3 or 4 dead, bearing a great impact. Under such circumstances, the group of dead armed with weapons continued to charge in the direction of the group. Their ferocious eyes without pupils bloomed with a ferocious glint that represented madness. If the dead charged over and launched attacks, Erica, Liliana, and Huina definitely wouldn't be able to stop them this time. Huina immediately used the God Descend spell without any hesitation. O divine wind, cleansing rain. Taking Susanu's divine power into her body and summoning the authority of the storm god, Huina's whole body burst into a whirlwind, and she shook it away. Dong! With a loud roar, the charging dead were all blown away by the storm, one by one, and they were all sent flying backward. Seeing this, Liliana's eyes turned cold and she stabbed the Grandmaster's silver craftsman's sword into the ground. Mother who gives and takes life, give me the landmarks of the dark land. Ripples of curse power spread out from the center of the Grandmaster silversmith, creating ripples on the ground. Wherever the invisible ripples passed, the ground would instantly soften and turn into a swamp. The corpses that were blown away by the storm struggled to get up, but the ground suddenly turned into a swamp and swallowed their bodies, causing them to sink into the ground one after another. Not letting go of this opportunity, Erica threw the Lion King's heart into the sky. Mission to the Steel Lion. Tear, pierce, bite, defeat, annihilate, and victory. I entrust you to this battlefield. The Lion King's heart that was thrown high suddenly trembled, then suddenly began to distort. The distorted Lion King's heart began to expand like a ball of light and gradually gathered into a ball. Finally, it turned into a steel lion that fell from the sky and landed on the ground. Roar! The steel lions roared and pounced on the corpses that had sunk into the swamp-like ground. The dead man who was trapped in the swamp swung his rusty weapon at the lion that was pouncing on him. The steel lions directly bit the rusty weapons with their sharp teeth and swung their sharp claws, trying to tear the corpses that were trapped. As a result, the steel lions and the corpses that were trapped in the swamp began to fight, causing roars and roars to resound over the entire island. The group of corpses and the steel lions fought each other, and for a moment, they fell into a stalemate. However, the stalemate was destined to only last for a while. This was because in the surrounding forest, swaying silhouettes began to appear one after another, slowly making their way towards this place. There was no doubt that those black figures were also the souls of the deceased that Athena had awakened. When they all joined the battle, the situation would definitely take a turn for the worse. After all, those corpses were all human warriors who were confident in their abilities when they were alive and dared to go to the invisible island to challenge the snake-haired demon Medusa. Even though they were now dead, had lost their minds, and had lost their abilities, there were still many of them. With the strength of Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na, it wasn't that easy to stop the group of corpses. For this reason, Yoli kept concentrating, closing her eyes, praying, and activating the curse power in her body in an attempt to obtain spirit vision and see the weaknesses of the group of corpses. Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na were still in a triangular formation, protecting Noah and Yoli in the middle. One was controlling the steel lions to fight a group battle. One was manipulating the earth to trap the group of corpses. The remaining one was constantly waving a storm, blowing away the approaching corpses. The group of girls grasped their tasks well one by one, and only then did they manage to block the group of corpses. Noah, who was protected by Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na in the middle, looked at the stalemate situation. His brows furrowed deeper and deeper, and he couldn't help but feel a little impatient. Perhaps seeing through the anxiety in Noah's heart, Erica spoke to Noah while controlling the steel lions. "Go and look for Athena. Leave this to us." Hearing this, Noah was slightly startled. After hesitating for a moment, he asked with uncertainty. "Can you do it, Era?" A fierce and confident smile like a lioness appeared on Erica's face. "Who do you think I am? Go." "Your Majesty," Liliana said with a stern face. "We will definitely bring you victory. If it's against a god, Hui Na has no confidence, but it's just some undead. Let's see how Hui Na exorcises them." Hui Na said in a cheerful tone while rolling up a storm. "Your Majesty's opponent should be a god that even Hui Na and the others can't deal with. Leave these undead to Hui Na and the others." After saying that, Erica, Liliana and Hui Na all revealed determined and confident looks. Gazing at the slender but reliable backs of the three girls, Noah took a deep breath and made a decision in his heart. With a flip of his hand, a rather gorgeous scabbard appeared in Noah's hand. 1,000-Mile Valley. Noah stuffed the scabbard in his hand into Yoli's arms. "This scabbard has the power to protect and heal you. I've stored enough spell power in it. I'll leave it to you for safekeeping. Use it properly." Yoli was stunned for a moment, but then he nodded with a serious face. "I understand." After Yoli took the scabbard, Noah took out 4 bottles of potions filled with blue liquid and stuffed them into the palms of the 4 girls. "This is a spiritual medicine that can quickly restore spell power. Drink it, and no matter how you use spells for at least an hour, you won't have to worry about running out of spell power." Hearing Noah's words, Liliana couldn't help but be a little surprised. There's actually such a spiritual medicine. What a powerful support. Erica held the potion in her hand tightly and smiled sweetly. This way, Erica Brantley will transform into a more valiant knight than a paladin. She can use cavalry without any scruples. Hui Na too. With the scabbard in Yoli's hand that can heal the body, Hui Na can use invite God to descend without any scruples, Hui Na said loudly. "So, Your Majesty, you can rest assured." Noah nodded heavily. Chapter 1469. Tap. 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 Clear footsteps echoed rhythmically in the surrounding space. Noah walked in at a leisurely pace. This place was a ruin. It looked like a luxurious palace. The surrounding walls were covered with vines and thorns. Numerous stone pillars stood in the spacious hall. They were engraved with snake-shaped patterns. It was as if there were extremely nimble snakes coiling around the pillars. They exuded an extremely ancient aura. It was the aura of snakes. It was like sticky blood, but also like a pungent fishy smell. It did not bring any discomfort, but instead, it gave off a sacred aura. While feeling the aura, Noah slowly walked forward. Noah raised his eyes and looked forward. An ancient wall that was also branded with snake-shaped patterns appeared there. In front of the wall, there was a throne. The Snake Queen, known for her beauty and wisdom, was sitting on the throne. She was still wearing the same ancient Greek-style dress. His entire body was rippling with divine power visible to the naked eye, like waves of air. Athena opened her eyes and looked at Noah with her snake-like, owl-like eyes. In that pair of indescribable charming eyes, a coquettish light shone brightly in the pitch-black moonlit night. Noah's and Athena's gazes finally met. Athena stared into Noah's deep, dark eyes as if she had tasted an intoxicating wine, and she spoke with satisfaction. Your eyes are full of fighting spirit, and very high. It's completely different from the last time. My efforts were not in vain. Athena's words made Noah squint his eyes. I see. You saw that I didn't want to fight you last time? Of course, my eyes are not so muddy that I can't see whether a warrior has the will to fight or not, Athena said proudly. This concubine is the god of war, and also the goddess of unparalleled wisdom. This concubine only needs a single glance to see whether this concubine's destined enemy wants to fight or not. That was why Athena did not fight with Noah immediately. Instead, she summoned the mythological beast in an attempt to stimulate Noah's fighting spirit. However, Noah used the mythological beast summoned by Athena to let Electra, Yuri, Liliana, and Hui Na win one battle, provoking Athena's self-esteem and forcing her to leave. In other words, the battle between Noah and Athena had actually started from the beginning. However, it was not in the form of martial arts, but in the form of intelligence. For me, the goddess of wisdom, to compete with intelligence is not a bad thing, but it is just for fun. It can't quell the surging passion in my heart. Athena, who was sitting on the throne, stared intently at Noah, her snake eyes emitting scorching emotions. As expected, the battle with you must be decided by martial arts. Therefore, I am not unhappy about your perfunctory attitude last time, but I am not satisfied either. Do you understand? Hearing this, Noah fell silent. After a while, Noah smiled helplessly. Goddess, famous for your beauty and wisdom, have you never thought about why I don't want to fight with you? There are many reasons why humans don't want to fight, but in the end, it's because they don't have enough awareness. Athena looked straight at Noah. My destined enemy, isn't the reason why you don't want to fight not because you don't have enough awareness? If you want to say that I don't have enough awareness, I guess you can say that, right? Noah shrugged and met Athena's gaze. After all, I won't want to fight to the death with someone I like for no reason. Athena was taken aback by his words. Under Athena's startled expression, Noah continued as if he was talking to himself. Although I have an ill-fated relationship with you, and I am extremely disgusted by your values of treating humans as trash, that is a characteristic of the gods of disobedience. Therefore, apart from this, I do have an extraordinary good impression of the goddess named Athena. Who would ignite their fighting spirit for no reason at all towards the person they have a good impression of? The scene suddenly fell into an indescribable silence. Athena stared straight at Noah, her snake eyes flashing slightly, as if she wanted to see through Noah's true thoughts and expose his lies. However, Noah didn't avoid Athena's gaze. Instead, he walked up to her and stared back at her. Looking at Noah's deep eyes that were as calm as the night sky, Athena suddenly laughed. And it was the kind of laughter that would cause her to convulse with laughter. In other words, you are my fated enemy. Do you have feelings for me? Athena said to Noah with a joyful smile. You actually dare to court the queen of the gods, goddess Athena? There should be a limit to your arrogance. But thinking about it, perhaps it wouldn't be too much to describe the ill-fated relationship between you and me as love. However, you are my fated enemy. I am the queen of the divine realm, the supreme goddess of wisdom, and the eternal virgin goddess. Athena narrowed her snake eyes. Even the gods are unable to win the love of the eternal virgin goddess. Although you are the demon king who killed the gods, you are just a mere human. Do you have the magnanimity to bear the love of Athena? What about you? Haven't you always claimed that you want to take me as your possession? Noah curled his lips into a smile, but his dark and deep eyes gradually burned with a bright light. Does the Queen of the Divine Realm, the Trinity, have the ability to bear my love? Noah's words made Athena laugh again, but her snake eyes were burning with an astonishing fighting spirit just like Noah's. That's why I said, there should be a limit to your arrogance. Athena is the eternal virgin goddess, and the love of a mortal is just a pile of rubble by the roadside. There is no need to pay attention to it. Athena slowly stood up, her eyes never leaving Noah. However, I am the Queen of the Divine Realm. Even if you are my fated enemy, doubting the Queen's ability is a great disrespect. Let me properly prove whether or not Athena has the ability to make you the goddess' possession. A terrifying amount of curse power surged out from Athena's body. Athena will use all her strength to crusade against the goddess' fated enemy. Noah Doria, prove your magnanimity to me, the eternal virgin goddess. The surging curse power fluctuated in this space, causing the air to freeze, the ground to tremble, and the night to tremble. At this time, the strength of the curse power surging from Athena's body had already surpassed that of the great sage. The night is my domain, and this island is the mythical place where my snake nature reappears. In this night, in this mythical place, my power will rise to the highest peak in history. Athena carried an astonishing aura that seemed to compress the whole world into her slender body, and she revealed a rather sinister smile at Noah. You are about to face an unprecedentedly powerful goddess, Noah Doria. Under such circumstances, do you still have the guts to woo Athena? Listening to Athena's seemingly joyful and provocative words, feeling the astonishing and terrifying aura, Noah suddenly smiled. Why do you think I chose to come here at night to settle things with you? At night, Athena's power would increase significantly. It was precisely because he understood this that Noah chose to come here at night. Knowing that Athena's power would increase during this period of time, he still chose this time to settle things. This was why Yerek claimed that Noah was indeed a godslayer. Only a godslayer would do such a reckless thing in order to satisfy his desire for a battle. However, Noah did not do this to satisfy his desire for battle. I only have one reason for doing this. Noah's entire body surged with terrifying curse power. It is to completely defeat you. Chapter 1470. 1. In the dark temple, two extremely violent curses shook and swept out like a storm. As if fighting for the ownership of space, they collided and squeezed each other, causing the space to tremble and shake. Noah and Athena's eyes met, and their eyes burned with an astonishing fighting spirit. Although they called each other fated and ill-fated, in fact, if one really wanted to count, this should be the first time Noah and Athena had a battle to the death. When they first met, Athena had not yet recovered her identity as the Queen of the Divine Realm, and Noah had just obtained his authority and become a god-slayer. Both of them were not mature. At that time, although Noah and Athena had a short confrontation, it was indeed quite short. They did not even exchange a single move, so it could not be considered a battle at all. Therefore, this was the first time Noah and Athena had a real battle in the truest sense. However, the fighting spirit in their hearts were unusually high. Gazing at Athena, who was standing in front of the throne, wearing an ancient Greek-style dress that swayed back and forth under the huge waves of curses, Noah's mind moved. In his body, the energy source that was filled with boundless energy suddenly turned into a source of divine might. The divine might energy surged towards Noah's limbs like a torrential stream. Athena was not only the goddess of the earth, but also the goddess of darkness who dominated the underworld, and the goddess of wisdom who controlled the wisdom of the heavens. Because she was always accompanied by these three attributes, Athena was the goddess of the Trinity. Now, under the night, Athena's divinity as the goddess of darkness had greatly increased, and on this invisible island, the earth attribute, which symbolized the snake, had also greatly increased. In this case, the miraculous effect of the demon slayer to break the power of curses would certainly greatly reduce the threat of the goddess of earth and darkness. After all, the demon slayer could even kill demon king Solomon, who had the power of the dark elf king who could control the elements of darkness. Its holy characteristics were undoubtedly the most lethal weapon for the goddess of death and darkness. The godhead that represented the Athena serpent was Medusa. The evil eye of this demoness could turn everything in her sight into stone. Even the Godslayer's curse resistance could not completely block it. However, if it was the curse-breaking power of the demon slayer, it would definitely be able to break the petrification curse. In addition, Noah's ultimate sword skill was a combination of sword skills and divine power. Without divine power and the fairy device, its true power could not be unleashed. Therefore, when the battle was on the verge of breaking out, Noah did not hesitate to transform the energy in his body into the source of divine power, and used the weapon refinement magic. Clank! A dazzling white light blossomed from Noah's hand, converging into the shape of a sword. The silver holy sword flashed in the dazzling light, and fell into Noah's hand. A large amount of divine power was immediately poured into the demon slayer, causing a dazzling white light to shine, dispelling the surrounding darkness and illuminating the entire space. Oh! What an unpleasant light, Athena frowned her beautiful eyebrows, but then smiled pleasantly. However, if it's not to this extent, then it won't be interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, Athena's figure suddenly turned into a dark shadow, and like a materialized darkness, she swept toward Noah. A dense darkness appeared in Athena's hand, and converged into a huge scythe that fell into Athena's hand. Let me see if your light is stronger, or if my darkness is stronger. After saying this, Athena, who had turned into a shadow, shot in front of Noah. The pitch-black scythe in her hand cut through the air, like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, drawing a perfect arc, and heavily chopped towards Noah's throat. Noah, who had long been prepared for battle, tightened his grip on the silver holy sword, and the divine power in his body surged. His footsteps slightly slowed, and then his whole body turned into a bolt of lightning, violently rushing out. Absolute sword technique. Initial form purple lightning. The purple lightning sword skill was one of the most commonly used absolute sword skills. This was because the average person would not be able to deal with the thrusts that were as fast as lightning. As long as there was a slight delay in reaction, the user of this absolute sword technique would be in an invincible position. Once, Versilia was instantly defeated by Renasubel's purple lightning, and her mind was distorted because of it. In other words, if one could not even withstand the initial form of the absolute sword technique, then the opponent was not qualified to make the user of the absolute sword technique use her full strength. Therefore, the user of the absolute sword technique would usually use the initial form of the purple lightning. Noah was the same. Thus, a strike comparable to lightning directly swept out, violently stabbing the pitch-black scythe that was chopping towards him. Clang! In the sound of a bell, the holy sword and the black scythe suddenly collided, setting off a circle of strong wind, sweeping out. Then, with the sound of water being poured on fire, in Noah's hand, a dazzling white light flashed from the silver holy sword on the black scythe, expelling the fog that was surging on it, dispersing it. Seeing this, Athena bit her lips and was speechless. Sure enough, it is an unpleasant light. Hearing this, Noah laughed. The best part is yet to come. After saying this, Noah's body suddenly spun, and the holy sword in his hand was like a full moon, flashing through space. Absolute sword technique. Form 3 Shadow Moon Dance. The holy sword flashing white light immediately turned into a ray of moonlight, with a cold but fatal arc, fiercely slashing towards Athena's delicate body. This slash first cut the surrounding darkness, and then as fast as the moonlight, it slashed towards Athena's direction, giving the illusion that a full moon suddenly appeared in the darkness. Seeing that her own darkness was easily expelled by the light of the holy sword, Athena did not dare to underestimate it, and hurriedly raised the black scythe in her hand, and poured her divine power into it, causing the black scythe to flash with a black light. As if the darkness was solid, it emerged on the black scythe. Clang! The holy sword flashing white light and the scythe flashing black light suddenly fiercely collided, causing the white light and the black light to soar almost at the same time, like fierce beasts devouring each other, frantically eroding each other. It's not over yet. At this time, Noah suddenly clenched his free hand into a fist, and ferocious blue veins bulged on his arm, and with a whistling sound and an ear-piercing explosion, he punched towards Athena. The fist carrying great power suddenly enlarged in Athena's eyes, causing a strong fighting spirit to appear in Athena's eyes, and on her delicate body, a substantial darkness like mist shook out. Bang! The powerful punch heavily bombarded the mist-like darkness from Athena's body, causing a muffled sound that made people's hearts tremble, and also set off a violent wind, shaking the ground inch by inch. Then, the white light and black light that were eroding each other seemed to have been detonated, and the whole thing exploded. Dong! Amidst an astonishing loud noise, a violent impact mixed with white and black light blasted out, shattering the ground, disorienting the air, and causing the entire temple to tremble. Two figures simultaneously shot out from the impact of the white and black light, and the soles of their feet brushed against the ground, each drawing a mark of hundreds of meters. Then, both of them raised their eyes and looked straight at each other, their eyes surging with extremely strong emotions. As expected of my fated enemy. Just the fact that you can rival a deity in martial arts is enough to prove your strength. Driven by her high emotions, the darkness in Athena's body soared. But only like this. That's not enough. Far from enough. You are my fated enemy. Amidst the loud shout, a fatal black wind spread out from Athena's body. Chapter 1471. A storm of black wind rose from Athena's body, like a burning black flame that kept rising. In the dense darkness, Athena's figure floated like a feather. Her body was enveloped by pitch-black flames and she raised the black scythe in her hand high above her head. Then, Athena's voice resounded from the darkness. Light can indeed expel darkness, but darkness can also devour light. My fated enemy, let Athena's darkness devour your light. In the midst of Athena's loud declaration, the darkness that was like a burning black flame suddenly twisted and turned into a giant black snake. Athena, who was floating at the 7-inch position of the giant black snake, swung her black scythe down in Noah's direction. As Athena's black scythe slashed down, the pitch-black giant snake made of dense darkness lifted its huge head and aimed at Noah, as if it was hunting for food. The upper half of its body suddenly rushed out. The giant black snake's body was quite large. Although it was not as big as the giant dragon that Letitia had summoned using the son of Ophiuchus constellation as a medium, its head alone was as big as a city. However, the head of the pitch-black giant snake was as big as a building. Therefore, when the entire upper body of the giant pitch-black snake suddenly swooped down and opened its huge mouth that was filled with dense darkness in Noah's direction, Noah's entire vision was blocked, and his clothes fluttered wildly under the attack of the wind and waves. It felt as though an entire pitch-black mountain had suddenly smashed down from the sky and was pressing down on Noah, causing his scalp to go numb. Even Noah had the same feeling. Therefore, Noah knew very well that Athena's words were not wrong. Even if the demon slayer had a strong restraining effect on darkness, if the target of the sword was too dark, it would only be devoured instead. If the demon slayer, in Noah's hand, was the elven magic device of the strongest sword spirit, then perhaps, with Aster's power and the support of Noah's endless divine power, no darkness could devour the light of the holy sword. However, Aster was still sleeping to awaken his true power. The demon slayer, in Noah's hand, was only an imitation made with the weapon refinement magic. Although the weapon refinement magic imitated the weapon's performance would not be weaker than the original, there were other restrictions. For example, the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, and the White Dragon Emperor's divine dividing wings, although they could be imitated with the weapon refinement magic, they could not be imitated with the balance breaker magic. In this way, under the huge restriction of being able to use the ability once every 10 seconds, their usefulness in battle would be reduced by a lot, to the point that they would not be useful in many high-level battles. The Demon Slayer was the same. Even if it was imitated, its performance would not be weaker than Aster's before he went into hibernation. However, the imitated equipment would only have performance and not a spirit. Without the cooperation of a contracted spirit, the power of the elven magic device would be reduced by more than half. As such, the replica of the Demon Slayer might not be able to break through Athena's darkness at full power. Immediately, Noah looked at the huge pitch-black snake head that was whistling over, and a solemn expression flashed across his eyes. Thus, with a thought, Noah's divine aura source that was filled with an endless supply of divine aura in his body suddenly turned and transformed into energy once again. However, this time, the energy in the source of divine aura did not completely transform into magic power, divine aura or divine aura. Instead, with a tremor, it transformed into magic power and divine aura. In the case of using two types of energy at the same time, the output of each type of energy would be reduced by half. Fortunately, the current Noah had the dragon's sovereignty of the sun to strengthen the output of the energy, greatly reducing the disadvantage of the output being reduced by half. And the next moment, accompanied by the sound of vibration, a huge golden ripple spread out from the ground in front of Noah. Immediately, a shield that was like a city wall suddenly rose from the huge golden ripple, standing in front of Noah and firmly protecting Noah. And in the instant that the huge shield that was like a city wall suddenly appeared, the huge black snake head that was rushing over also brought along a terrifying fluctuation, whistling down and heavily landing on the thick shield. Dong! Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar resounded in this vast temple, and it shook the echo. Like invisible ripples, it carried a substantial impact and spread out. Pung! Wherever the terrifying shock wave passed, the temple floor that exuded an ancient aura suffered the most serious damage. Like broken glass, it burst open very simply. Even the rubble that was lifted up was shaken into powder, which was shocking. Pung! The terrifying shock wave was still spreading, causing the pillars that were branded with snake-shaped lines to shatter and crack under the impact. Under such circumstances, the stone pillars fell down one by one, making the entire temple seem like it was collapsing, shaking repeatedly. At this time, even the ceiling of the temple could not continue to maintain its original shape. In the sound of kacha-kacha, cracks kept appearing. Pieces of rubble suddenly fell from the ceiling, pouring down like raindrops. For a time, the entire temple seemed to be ravaged by an earthquake, and it was on the verge of collapse. It was only at this moment that the pitch-black giant serpent slowly lifted its upper body from the thick sand and dust that pervaded the air like a spring. Inside the pitch-black giant snake, Athena, holding a black scythe, stared at the spreading thick sand and dust, a pair of cold snake eyes flashing slightly. At a certain moment, Athena's pretty face changed slightly. At this instant, numerous black figures shot out from the dense sand and dust that filled the air like lightning. The bodies of the black shadows were silver chains flowing with golden light, and the front end carried wedges of different shapes. These chains shot out one after another from the thick sand and dust that filled the air. Like arrows that had been released from a bow, they shot towards the pitch-black giant serpent that had raised its huge serpent head. Then, the chains suddenly wrapped around the body of the pitch-black giant snake, binding the long snake body. The pitch-black giant snake suddenly let out a soundless roar and began to struggle with all its might, twisting its huge snake body. However, the chains were firmly wrapped around the giant snake's body. No matter how much the giant snake struggled, there was no crack at all. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena's extraordinary eyesight could see the nature of the chains tightly wrapped around the pitch-black giant snake's body. She could not help but be shocked. How could this be? However, the thing that really shocked Athena was yet to come. Golden ripples suddenly flashed in front of her like water waves. Inside, there were various weapons such as swords, sabers, spears, halberds, and so on that seemed to have popped out of the water and appeared in front of Athena's eyes. Athena's extraordinary wisdom allowed her to instantly see through the essence of each and every piece of equipment like she had just done. Therefore, Athena could almost recognize them in an instant. At this moment, each of the weapons before him was a god relic that was famous in all sorts of myths. No. That was not all. Among the weapons, there were even prototypes of famous god relics. Now, all of these weapons were aimed at Athena. In the next second, the weapons turned into beams of light and shot toward Athena, whose expression changed abruptly. Chapter 1472. Swish, 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 swish. Amidst a series of sharp and clear sonic booms, sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of other weapons turned into beams of light. They tore through space at extreme speeds, shooting towards the giant black snake like a storm. Tightly bound by the chains, the giant black snake could not break free at all. It could only watch as the weapons turned into beams of light and shot towards it. It could not put up any resistance at all. As a result, the blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of weapons that shot out like a violent storm instantly landed on the pitch-black giant snake. Bang! Amidst the muffled explosion, a weapon that had turned into a beam of light exploded a corner of the giant black snake, forcibly cutting a hole in its surface. Bang, 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 bang. Immediately after, various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on continuously bombarded the pitch-black giant snake's body, causing the pitch-black mist-like darkness to explode one after another, causing a series of muffled explosions to ring out. With just a single wave of attacks, the gigantic pitch-black snake was riddled with holes by the weapons that came shooting over. Every part of its body was pierced through. Under such circumstances, the pitch-black snake that was riddled with holes finally couldn't even maintain its form. Dong! The black serpent made of darkness disintegrated amidst the explosion, turning back into an extremely dense darkness. In the darkness, Athena, who was holding the black scythe, retreated as if she was caught in a storm. It didn't take long for her to break through the darkness and fly out from the other end of the thick darkness. However, almost at the same time, a protrusion slowly appeared in front of the thick sand and dust on the ground. Along with the sound of tearing wind, a figure rushed out from the protrusion in the thick sandstorm, heading straight for Athena, who was retreating in midair. Athena, who was still shocked by the sight of the god relics that only existed in myths and legends, immediately raised her head and looked at the figure that was charging at her at an alarming speed. She immediately lifted the black scythe in her hand. At the same time, Noah's figure appeared in front of Athena in a flash. His pair of deep, dark eyes stared straight at Athena's slightly shocked face. He raised the holy silver sword in his hand high up and swung it down hard. Clang! The holy sword that was shining in a dazzling white light with terrifying power slashed hard on the black scythe that was hurriedly raised in midair. A powerful force instantly passed through the black scythe and hit Athena's body. Under the impact of the huge force, Athena was sent flying along with her scythe. She slammed into a stone pillar covered with snake-like patterns. She didn't know what to do next. She didn't know what to do next. Bang! With a loud explosion, the stone pillar that was hit by Athena broke and fell to the ground with a loud crash, stirring up a cloud of dust. In the dust, Athena, who had her back hit the stone pillar directly, could not help but let out an extremely soft groan. She clenched her teeth, tightened her grip on the black scythe in her hand, and swung it forward suddenly. The dust that filled the air was immediately cut open by the black scythe, and was blown away by the whistling wind that came along with the black scythe. Then, Athena saw it. Noah, who was holding the holy sword that was shining in a dazzling white light, leaped high into the air. Under the soles of his feet, a circle of divine aura gathered and exploded, releasing all of it in one breath. Noah's figure turned into a ray of light and dove down at an astonishing speed. Ultimate sword skill. Form 2 Meteor. This was the derivative of the initial form, purple lightning. The principle used was the same as the initial form of purple lightning, which was to gather the divine aura under the feet and release it in one breath. It was an ultimate sword skill that could explode at an extremely fast speed. However, unlike the initial form of purple lightning that could only be used horizontally, the second form of meteor was an ultimate sword skill that was used for aerial attacks and had absolute control of the air. Since ancient times, the side that had absolute control of the air would have a huge advantage whether it was in battle or war. This was a principle that had never changed since ancient times. After all, between an opponent who could fly and an opponent who could not, which side was more difficult to deal with, there was no need to explain. Therefore, even though the second form, meteor, was only a simple evolution of the initial form, purple lightning, turning a horizontal thrust into a high-altitude thrust, with the help of air control and the acceleration of gravity, the power and speed of this ultimate sword technique was superior to that of purple lightning. Therefore, Noah, who was holding the silver holy sword, directly turned into a meteor that fell from the sky, bringing with it a whistling wind, and violently pierced towards Athena's direction. In the blink of an eye, the tip of the silver holy sword was less than 2 meters away from Athena. In this moment of imminent peril, Athena's body suddenly burst with a black light. This was different from the extremely dense darkness from before. If the previous darkness was said to be as dense as the sewage in a swamp, then at this moment, the black light from Athena's body was like a transparent crystal. This kind of translucent black light expanded in the air, converging in front of Athena. In the midst of the trembling sound, the black light condensed and turned into a shield. It was a thick shield that seemed to be made of obsidian, with the head of a gorgon carved on the front. Noah recognized this shield. Its name was Aegis. In Greek mythology, the goddess of wisdom, Athena, had the head of the Gorgon Medusa embedded in it, and it had the ability to petrify. The meteor sword that fell from the sky immediately landed heavily on the pitch-black shield. Ding! In an extremely crisp sound of collision, the tip of the silver holy sword violently pierced the shield named Aegis, causing a burst of sparks. Swish! At the same time, the goddess, who was famous for her beauty and wisdom, flashed out from behind the shield. The black scythe in her hand had a cold arc of light and a fatal black light as it ruthlessly slashed at Noah's neck. That attack did not even reach Noah's neck, but Noah felt a chill on his neck, causing his heart to tighten. Logically speaking, Noah was strengthened by the sovereignty of the Leo constellation's sun sovereign, so it could achieve true invulnerability and would not be injured by sharp weapons like the scythe. However, Athena's black scythe was not a simple weapon, but a power formed by condensing the power of darkness. As the god of the underworld, Athena's black scythe was like the scythe of the god of death. It could directly bring about death and harm the soul. Noah had reason to believe that even if he relied on the sovereignty of the Leo constellation to become invulnerable to weapons and weapons to block the attack of the black scythe, the power of the black scythe that could even harm the soul would definitely not be able to block it. Therefore, this attack must be blocked. Wave-like golden ripples suddenly flashed in the air. Inside, a thick shield appeared, blocking in front of the black scythe. Clang! The black scythe slashed down heavily and landed on the thick and heavy shield, causing a strong shockwave and sparks to burst out once again. At this moment, Athena's pair of snake eyes shrunk to the size of a needle. There was no other reason. The shield that appeared from the golden ripples and blocked the black scythe was very familiar to Athena. Its entire body was made of obsidian, thick and heavy. The front of the shield had the head of a gorgon. Other than Aegis, what else could it be? Kaboom! Under the impact of Athena's attack, the stone pillar that was broken in two finally collapsed, and under the tremor of the ground, a cloud of dust rose. Pah! In the crisp sound of landing, Noah and Athena fell from the air at the same time and steadily landed on the ground, facing each other with the broken pillar in between. Everyone was suddenly silent. Athena, who was holding the black scythe, raised her head and looked straight in the direction of Noah. She was surprised and puzzled. Why do you have that shield? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.